And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, attention to roll call.
All right, come on, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time. And, of course, for me, I'm in the great state of Arizona. It's 6:05 Mountain Time. John, before we head to the podcast, we got a bit of a post change. Shout out to Tom Joyce. Good morning. After roll call, Eric Dibbs, Special Ops Lieutenant to the squad. Firing up espresso and some biscotti. Love it, brother. Outstanding. Lieutenant Macari can handle the desk and the 13 prisoners in the cell waiting for transport. Shout out to you, Tom Joyce, our brother, friend of the podcast. Listen, John, before we get into today's topic, let's talk about the main event tonight. I'm going to be watching. I'm sure many other people will be watching. I know some people are disgusted. They don't want to watch. But I think it's total entertainment. What do you got? What are your thoughts about tonight? You watching?
Oh, I mean, I'm crazy busy tonight, and I'm hoping I make the fight. I'm hoping that I can watch the fight. My wife, I'm doing duties for my 4'11" chief, 3-star she is. And but I'm going to try to make I'm definitely going to try to watch the fight wherever I am. I'm going to be sneaking in the corner watching it. I mean, dude, I got to be honest. Like I said, I like Jake Paul. I think the kid is brilliant. I think he's a great entertainer. I love the whole fight. I love the hoopla around it. I hate to see it. There's no way I cannot watch it. But I'm pulling for Tyson, dude. I'm not going to lie. I'm watching Tyson move, and yeah, he's scary. Yeah, I don't want to fight the man. I don't want to get in the ring with him. But he's 58. You see it. Like you see he's 58, dude. He shouldn't be in that ring. But I'm still pulling for him. I'm still pulling for the underdog, bro. I want to see was it Rocky 6 when he comes out and he wins. I want to see the Rocky. I want to at least see him go the distance.
Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. This does solidify. So I've been training for years doing martial arts, every form. I love it. And I boxed a long time too. But what it does prove is that age, size, physical dexterity does matter. For the ladies out there, size does matter. It changes the game. It does. It changes the game. If people say, size doesn't matter. No, it does matter, right? So if you have 20 years of training and someone else has never trained before and there's 50 pounds disparity and maybe 10 years in age, well, that training will actually make up that gap. But if someone is as big as Jake Paul, and I think he's 27, 28 years old, and Mike Tyson, as athletic and agile as he is, he's 58. So the age factor changes. So in jiu-jitsu, Henna Gracie has been talking about this for years. They call it the Boyd effect. So basically they say that if you're a blue belt and you're 20 years old and you're training with someone who's a black belt who's 50 years old, that kind of evens out the gap. So for every 10 years in age, it's almost like you go up a belt. In 20 pounds, you go up a belt. So it starts to even out because of age and weight. That's why we have weight classes. So I think it does prove that a 58-year-old Mike Tyson and a 28-year-old Jake Paul starts to even out because of age. But I do think Jake Paul gets the edge because of his age and his size. He's a big man.
It's funny though, like when you talk about Tyson now, like with size. So he was never really like Tyson's a big dude. Like he's wide. He's like Jocko Willing. He's got that big head and they got that big frame, but they're not big dudes, bro. Like they're like, I mean, Tyson's thicker than us, but he's the same size as us. He's 5'10", So I think that's funny. Like when I look at Tyson's career and I see people like shirk from him and they're afraid of him, like in his younger years when he was just knocking people out. He presented himself as a giant. I think he still does. I've been close to Tyson, and I think that was the thing that I was like, I admired the most about him is I was like, wow, this dude's not even that much bigger than me. Like he's like the same size as me, and yet he's fighting heavyweights and dropping them, dude. And these dudes will flick me. Oh, you know what I mean? they'll, and so I was like, I think it was really impressive. So this comes out last night. I don't know if you got a chance to see this, but this is at the weigh-in when they go to shake hands. Watch what happens. I don't want to play the video. I don't know what type of music's on there. I'm just gonna play the video without the audio.
I saw this. This was wild. This is classic Mike.
Ladies and gentlemen.
What'd you think about this?
It's classic Mike. It's classic Mike. I mean, I think it's always like there's like two Mikes. Mike who's always joking around, having a good time. You ever heard about the story where someone had a gun and he was like, "Hey, buddy, just put it down." Like sometimes he's just so chill, and sometimes he just lets that inner child out. Mike's unpredictable. I love Mike Tyson. Big fan. Nighthawk 13666 says when Mike Tyson was 13, he was 250 pounds. That's so true. He was just always a big kid. I see Mike Tyson in person. Yeah, he's not tall, but he's wide. He's got some girth on him. But Jake Paul, look, he's a big dude, man. He's much bigger than Mike. Much bigger. And shout out to Rich Raj, of course. Listen, always put his hand in his pocket. We appreciate it, brother. $10. Get some coffee and donuts for the podcast. We'll definitely need it for a post change and when you're on the desk. $10. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you. I think classic Mike. I mean, it's just Mike. It's funny, man, but he still can move. God bless him.
Yeah, no, he's still. I mean, I don't know. Some people are saying it's staged. Some people saying it's not. I don't know. It doesn't look too staged to me. I don't know. I was watching the press conferences. There's actually a good docu-series on Netflix if you guys get time today before the fight to watch it. I think it's like a 3-part series. Hyping up the fight. Almost like a fight presser. They go into both the training camps, both of them. But I watched the presser also, and at the press event last night, like Tyson's like, he's not even talking. It's weird. They're asking him questions. He's like, I just want to fight. I just want to fight. He wasn't, and then they get Jake Paul in the end, and you could tell he's mad. The guy goes, "What's up with Mike? Why was he like that?" One of the reporters asked Jake Paul as he's walking. He goes, "I got to carry all these events. I don't know what his problem is. I got to carry all these events." Like basically saying that he wants the friction for to sell up the hype, but I don't really think you need to sell his fight. It's I don't think you need to sell it. A Tyson fight's you already sold it. You sold it already.
I don't think it's staged, but I do think it's Mike's persona. Like that's how Mike gets himself ready. I read a lot of stuff and I listened to a lot of stuff from Customato and Mike Tyson. And Customato always talks about fear and how fear is your friend and how you actually utilize fear. And he talks about how confidence is supreme. And that was always there, like Norman's. Confidence is supreme, and you need to build yourself up to that fight. That pretty much is 90% mental. And I think that's what Mike is doing right now, because I think Mike Tyson is really fond of Jake Paul. He's always way before this fight was actually scheduled. They were talking about it. He's always spoke great about Jake Paul and talking about how he's brilliant, making money, and he loves what him and his brother are doing. So he loves the entertainment. I do too, and I think it's impressive. The style that Mike Tyson used, which is called the peekaboo style, takes extreme athleticism, and it was smart by Customato to utilize that because he's not tall, and it's very effective when you fight with someone who's much taller. So it wouldn't be effective if you're a taller guy fighting someone smaller. So Customato was just brilliant. Jesse James, shout out to you, brother. Says I made over 800 hours of overtime this year with over 21 years of service. I made the decision to retire last year. 385 hours. Less than 200 hours as a patrol cop. Yeah, listen, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about overtime. But before we do you think it's insult? And this is what I'm hearing. Some people say, "Oh, this is insulting to Mike. You shouldn't do it." Or do you think it's just straight up entertainment? That's what I see.
I listen. I don't know. I don't think it's insulting. I mean, Tyson wants to do it, dude. It's like I remember my father was dying in the hospital, and I was fighting in Madison Square Garden. He's like, why are you gonna fight for? Like, what's that about? I thought you those days are over for you. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I got no hard feelings towards the guy I'm fighting, really. I said, but let me ask you, if you're in shape, if you could go box in the Garden right now, even if you have no anger towards the guy, would you do it? He's like, oh yeah, hell yeah. I was like, all right, so why are you asking? You know, that's why I'm doing it. You know what I mean? I think Tyson's, you know, why not? Why not? I hope that if I'm in shape at 58 to get in the ring, I don't think I'm gonna be. I actually was boxing on Sunday, dude. I was like, forget about it, bro. I couldn't even. I was dying on minute rounds, dying. Like I was like, I couldn't even. I was like, oh my God, man. And I work out every day, you know, and I kind of try to stay in somewhat cardio shape, but it's just totally different. It's totally different when you're hitting the bag. It's totally different when you're throwing punches. It's totally different when you're perceiving threats. It's totally, totally different. And my adrenaline wasn't flowing at all. Like I didn't even face the real fear. It was literally just training. You know what I mean? It had nothing to do with like real life scenario or real life in the ring. Wasn't like hardcore sparring or anything like that. And I couldn't keep up at 44. I was like, wow. I could really feel my years as a difference, you know. I could still throw, I could still hit hard though. But like, you know, I definitely noticed the difference, you know.
Well, I used to box, but it's been a long time since I've been boxing. The past couple of years, I've been doing jiu-jitsu. I've been, with travel and retirement, I've competed quite often. I competed in Malaysia. And same as you, I had an opportunity. I was in Malaysia once. I had a competition, and they didn't have my age group, and they didn't even have my weight group. So the guys were 70 pounds heavier. I forgot what it was in kilos. They were 30 years old. And I was like, you know what? I'm doing it anyway. And why not? You know, in another country, on a stage, it was awesome. I don't regret it. Great competition. I've just recently did some in-house competitions in LA. Awesome. You know, out there. And I can tell you, you feel the difference, you know. January, I'll be 45 years old, and I'm out there competing with guys that are in their early 20s, and you feel it. But it's great just to know that you can do it, and especially, you know, in your late 40s. So hats out to him, 58 years old, just to be able to get in the ring and just throw some punches, you know, with a young, strapping man. So Upstate Detective, shout out to you, brother. We appreciate it. Coffee and Donuts on the podcast. 999 says, good morning, brothers. Good morning to you. We appreciate it. Actually, Upstate Detective, we apologize. You actually gave some coffee donuts to the podcast on the last episode, or maybe 2 episodes ago, and we actually closed out the episode prior to even acknowledging you. So we appreciate it. We'll just reach out to you and say that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Upstate Detective. Listen, before we get on the overtime, real quick, rumors are flying that Donald's stepping down today. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's not, but that's what we're hearing. I know we spoke about it before. I was been saying forever that I think it's Tariq Shepard, but I think this whole slap debacle or whatever happened, I don't want to say slap, but whatever happened, the whole debacle between him and Donlin when they were yelling at each other and pushing each other and had to get separated at the marathon, I think that kind of maybe took him out of the running. I've been hearing Ben Tucker's name coming up left and right. What have you heard anything? Like, what do you think?
My phone was blowing up. Everyone's saying the same thing. They're saying Ben Tucker. I was thinking the same thing. Believe it or not, I was like, damn, I think John's actually going to win this bet, right? Because I kept saying Kaz Daughtry, and you were saying Tariq Shepard. And a lot of people saying it looked like Tariq Shepard was actually going to get the spot until, you know, he had the Mike Tyson slap to Jake Paul. So, you know, I'm thinking our next meme right now. We got Mike Tyson with Jake Paul and Tariq Shepard and Tom Donlin. But, yeah, dude, and I'm hearing Ben Tucker quite often. That name has come up a lot. I would not be surprised. It looks like it's going that way. And I think I can't see Ben Tucker saying no, right? He's in with the in crowd. He's in the club. So
I don't think he is, honestly. I think he's I don't think he is. Like I think that he was Shepard's mentor. I think he basically hid Shepard his whole career. But you know, I think he was slighted when I think he felt slighted when Shea was announced as the PC, right? And then if he was in with the in crowd, why wasn't he appointed when Adams makes mayor, right? Why wasn't he appointed when Keechan Sewell steps down? It's like, you know, now I feel like Adams is going on the bench. I shout out to Ben Tucker. I'm not, no hard feelings. I don't, you know, I never had a problem with Ben Tucker. I thought he was a professional. You know, I never had an issue with anything he did or said or anything like that. I thought he was a professional. I know there was some incidences that happened that, you know, but that's in the course of everybody's career, especially when you're that high up. But I think, you know, I think he's he's in the in crowd somewhat, but I kind of think it's if it's me, I'm not doing it. I'm just telling you, if I'm Ben Tucker, I'm not doing it. I'm gonna be like, absolutely. Now you want me to come out? Now he's probably like 72 years old at this point. But I guess if you want to cement your legacy, I guess why not? So shout out to him if that's what he wants to do. He's got to be like in his 70s. He says that he joined the November 21st, 1969. He joined the NYPD as an 18-year-old. On November 5th, 2014, he was appointed first deputy commissioner. So here we are. It's November 15th, 2024. 10 years after being appointed first deputy commissioner. So it's 10 years later, still in November. So November runs deep for him and the NYPD. Let's see if he gets another date in November.
He always appeared to me not to be a firecracker, but he appeared to be kind of stoic. He was mild-mannered, quiet, but I think at the same time extremely intelligent. So I do think this would be their best pick out of all picks they could possibly have right now. Will he? I think he will. I think he'll take it. I don't see why he wouldn't. I think he's pretty stoic. This is what they need. But will he actually be the actual commissioner? The answer is no. I think it will be back to business as usual. I don't think it will change anything. Tom Donilon, does it matter if he steps down or not? It doesn't matter if he steps down or not? Absolutely not. I mean, Kaz Daughtry giving a press conference and putting on a whole media tour and selling the drone program while Tom Donilon is way off to the side was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. VSS Ventura's, shout out to you, brother. $5 to the podcast. Coffee and donuts. Since Mania's not far away. How about Donilon versus Shepard street fight at WrestleMania 41 with Kaz as special guest ref? Trump and Adams on commentary. Dude, the memes make themselves. That's what we've been saying.
As long as I get to come out from the backstage when Kaz comes out, we'll be good. I'm in. Let's do it. MSG, baby. MSG.
Hey, Ron Layson says he doesn't see Ben taking the job if he can't run it. You know what? That might be the case. Like I said, my impression of Ben Tucker, from my tenure in the job, was kind of quiet, mild-mannered, but intelligent and stoic. And I think that sometimes that's what you need in leadership. And that might be what we need right now to cool things down. But I don't think it would change business as usual under Eric Adams. But maybe because we have the tale of two Erics, now that we have a new Eric, that might change things.
Well, yeah, the post-indictment Eric Adams, I think, could it potentially I could see it. But I mean, listen, I don't think anybody's running anything under Eric Adams, even post-indictment Eric Adams. I think he has his people in place. I think Kaz Daughtry runs the job. I've been saying it over and over again. I mean, that article and that Tina Moore did was exactly right. He's the deputy commissioner of operations. The title should technically be the operational police commissioner because that's who he is. I think Tom Donilon's time was short. We always knew that. There was a press conference, I think at the off topic too. No. I think it was the press conference with the drones, if I'm not mistaken, where Adams actually introduces Donilon as the interim police commissioner. So, I mean, you know his time's short. You know, you keep reminding everyone this dude's the interim police commissioner. He's been there, 2 months. You keep reminding everybody. I think his time's over. I think the whole Shepard thing bought him a couple of weeks. I think his time was supposed to be gone much earlier than that. We spoke about that with the Jessica Tish, and I thought she thought it would be a bad time to step in. I think anyone that has a brain right now would think this is a bad time to step in. This could be a temporary assignment, but I think someone who's elderly, who doesn't care if their assignment's only 6 months or a year, who just wants to attain that rank, wants to put it under their belt, I think they're going to look over a lot of things. I think it would be hard for me to look over to see the whole big picture too. I don't think Eric Adams is going to sell anybody on, oh yeah, I'm running everything and you're not going to do anything and you're going to be a puppet and Kaz control. I don't think that's what's happening. So I think it would be easy to sell Ben Tucker on that he's going to run the police department until Ben Tucker gets there and realizes exactly what Keechant Sewell realized, exactly what Ed Caban realized, exactly what Tom Donilon realized. So I think we all headed for another first in the Adams regime. post indictment. And we're headed for the 4th police commissioner in NYPD. This will be a first in one term for any New York City mayor.
Shout out to Jesse James. More coffee, more donuts. We appreciate it. Maybe I'll get a bagel. He said, thank you, fellas. No, thank you. We appreciate it. Jesse James, you've been here pretty much every day. Friend to the podcast. Thank you so much. Patrick Jordan nails it here too, man. Honestly, Patrick, how you doing, brother? Hopefully I can see you out in LA soon. I'll be back in LA pretty soon. We should definitely meet up. Still working in his 70s. Let it go. These days, I am the chief grandchild spoiler. Absolutely. Like, come on. What? That's the one thing I have to say is you're in your 70s. Just enjoy retirement. Like, at what point, and I'm not saying that you have to fade away and go away. You can always stay relevant to the police department if that's what you want to have, that type of camaraderie. But do you, in your 70s, do you really have the stamina to perform as a high-level police commissioner? That's how you know this is going to be another placement holder, even though I think he's stoic and professional, intelligent. He's in his 70s. How much stamina could he actually have to do as the police commissioner? Unless you're a rarity like Donald Trump, his stamina is impressive. But for the most part, it's going to be Kes Daughtry, Tariq Shepard, John Shell, the 3 kings. Nothing's going to change. I think it's the same horse, different color.
But again, let's bring it back to Tyson. You're a man. I don't care how old you are. And you think you could do everything, right? You think you could get in the ring and beat a 27-year-old kid who's been boxing for the last decade and is in shape and is ripped out of his mind and has been knocking people out left and right. And you're like, yeah, I could fight that kid. Yeah, I could knock that kid out. Yeah, that kid's nobody. Yeah, it's hard to give up. Listen, I ain't going to put a number on it. Like, if he's 72, God bless him. If he feels like he could do it, I don't see why he wouldn't be able to do it. I just think anyone stepping into this regime right now, I think you kind of got a couple of screws loose. You really do. If you're doing it for your legacy, I get it. I get it, but it's a bad time in the New York City Police Department unless you're coming in and you're going to seriously make changes. And again, I think post-indictment Eric Adams, and I think we should actually do a show on that, what's his path to re-election, because it's looking like he's going to be man of the year 2024 for the Finest Unfiltered podcast. I think you were right about that, Eric. And so I think we should actually do what's Eric Adams' path to re-election podcast, because it 2 things. 1, it looks like he's staying till 2025. 2, in my opinion, it looks like the Trump administration's gearing up to give him a pardon, drop the case, lessen the severity of the case that he's facing currently. If any of you guys didn't see, Damian Williams, he will step down upon the Trump administration. Trump had just named, I'll bring the name up in a second, but he named a new Manhattan U.S. District Attorney. So it's looking to me like Eric Adams is the dude has like 9 lives. It's crazy. His whole administration's getting thrown under the bus, but he might get them off. So who's the pick? It's for the Southern District of New York. He nominated Jay Clayton of New York, who served as chairman of U.S. Securities and Exchange Commissions during his first term. It's what are you thinking?
There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, there's obviously some subliminal messages going back and forth between Eric Adams and Donald Trump's team. There's no doubt in my mind. And like you said it yesterday about what Matt Gaetz said about Matt Gaetz talking about Eric Adams sitting in the middle on the plane and, basically sitting in economy, sitting in coach and not sitting first class and sitting in the middle. His comments saying, shout out to Eric Adams for that. There's a lot of subliminal messages going on. Eric Adams has been pandering down to the Trump administration. So definitely, we just know it's so self-serving. I mean, even what he's saying now about the migrant crisis, total different tune than what he said before when he was supporting open borders and supporting a sanctuary city, a sanctuary state. So it just shows Eric Adams is about Eric Adams. So after he gets his pardon, I'm sure he'll be back to the other Eric. And so the question is after this, right, what political parties is he going to identify with? Because I think the Democrats are going to just completely oust him. He can't, is he going to become a Republican? If he does, John, 100%. If he becomes a Republican, I'm going to have to say, and I was talking about this yesterday. This is hilarious. I was like, John's right. I was talking about this yesterday. John's right. The Republicans in New York, they're the progressive light. If Eric Adams becomes a Republican, forget about it. In New York, there is no Republican Party.
Dude,
there is none.
The minute he got indicted, all the Republicans in New York started saying he should switch to Republican. Right? The big money Republican donors, they all donated to Eric Adams' campaign. Forget even donating to Eric Adams' campaign. They donated more money to Eric Adams' campaign than they did to Curtis Sliwa. They completely ignored Bill Pepitone, who was an NYPD cop who ran for mayor. They completely ignored the guy. He had, in my opinion, he had the most common sense policy. He was actually on this show. I think it was an audio-only version early on. If you guys want to listen to that, I highly recommend you listen to the Bill Pepitone episode and hear what this man's plan was for New York and then envision what it would be like today. So he was completely ignored by the Republican Party, by completely everyone. He ran on the conservative ticket. But not only did they give more money to Eric Adams, they were holding fundraisers for Eric Adams while they're endorsing Curtis Sliwa. Tell me we're not running people to lose in New York City. Tell me the Republicans are not running people to lose. All right, yeah, kid. Yeah, John, we're going to run you, but, you're not going to have a great campaign. We're not really going to support you. We're going to put all our money behind this other guy. But, you'll make a lot of money and, it'll be fun and you'll have fun. You'll get your name out there and you'll build your character up more and you'll be worth more. Your value as a talk show host and everything else will be worth more. I'm not saying that that's what happened with Curtis Sliwa, but that's what it looks like to me. And it looks like it's setting up for round two to me, and that's what I see when I look at New York City politics. When I look at New York City politics, and I was on a space with Cafecito Break and former candidate for, I believe he ran for city council and the Senate or the Assembly and the Senate. I forget what, a former candidate, Mark Suskowitz. And I said that there haven't been any Republican opposition in years since Bloomberg. And he was just pointing to that there were people on the ballot. And I was like, it's different. There's a difference between having Republicans endorse candidates on the ballot than actually backing Republican endorsed candidates who are on the ballot. I'm saying there's no opposition. It appears to me that we've been throwing candidates up there just to make it look good. When you look down the slate in New York, look at the Republicans. Look at the Republican city council members. Look at the Republican state Senate members. Look at the state assembly members. Look at them. You're going to notice one thing about all of them. They run unopposed. The majority of them run unopposed. And now you got to sit there and say, in a Democratic stronghold, in a supermajority that I believe was just recently broke, and I think they still control the majority, but not the supermajority, when the Democrats have so much money, when they're so aligned, when they actually help candidates, they mentor candidates, they bring up new candidates, they recruit new candidates, and they consistently hold all these seats. And the Republican Party doesn't challenge them for any seats, right? So they run unopposed. 1 or 2 or 3 seats a year get challenged. Everybody else that tries to run on the Republican ticket gets ignored, and the Republicans are running unopposed. Tell me there's not a deal being made behind the scenes. Somebody please tell me, because that's just what I see. I see people running unopposed. I see a uniparty. I do not see a GOP in New York at all.
I think you nailed it, brother. I think you nailed it. I mean, clearly we see it right now. And when you said he's politically, at this point, homeless, he's in purgatory. That's why I say I think he's completely ousted by the Democrats. And he's actually starting to lean more towards the Republicans. I think if anyone was actually welcomed Adams and showed him any warmth in this situation right now, it's the Republicans. It's the Republicans that actually backed him the most in this. I think the question, though, is for Donald Trump. Do you think for Donald Trump and his team that if they're going to give a pardon, that in the long term, because we can foresee the effects short term, but in the long term, do you think that that's going to be a positive thing for the Donald Trump team, or do you think that actually might hurt Donald Trump, giving Eric Adams a pardon?
I think long term, if anyone that surrounds himself with Eric Adams will eventually. I mean, do you want Henry Hill on your team? I don't. Do you want Henry Hill on? Do you want someone that you can't trust at all? Who's working behind your scenes? I don't want him on. But I see the short term of it. I see the short-term political strategy that you have a guy who's compromised, who's the New York City mayor, the most iconic city in the world, and now the same way he's going to make world peace, he's going to have the mayor in his back pocket. I see the value in it. I'm not saying that Donald Trump trusts Eric Adams. I'm not saying it at all, but I think that there's a political strategy there. So, I mean, we're seeing it day after day. You know, I'm no fan of Eric Adams at all. I look at who's running for New York City mayor, and I'm like, I can't believe that this guy looks, in my opinion, when I break down the chart, if I'm looking at a Tyson and I'm looking at a Jake Paul, when I'm looking at Eric Adams and I'm comparing him to Brad Landa, Jessica Ramos, Scott Stringer, when I'm going down the ballot and I'm doing the tail of the tape, I'm like, oh my God, this guy had the worst, in my opinion, he had the worst term ever as a New York City mayor. He's the first indicted mayor in New York City history. He's, in my opinion, the appearance of corruption stinks to high heaven. He cannot pick an appointment that actually could stay. He hasn't picked one person that I'm like, yeah, that person was qualified and competent and doing a good job. Not one person. Maybe actually Tish. Tish was probably one of his better appointments. Tish was actually a good appointment. Sanitation's running. You know, I don't hear too many complaints from the sanitation guys, to be honest with you. I don't hear, you know, other than they complain about the crime in the city, you know, I don't hear too much from them. I think other than that and the Key Chan Sewell appointment, I think all of his appointments have been horrific. And I'm sitting there right now saying, wow, he's the best candidate. He's the best candidate.
Even over Giuliani?
Yeah.
I know. It's sad. It's sad that he's the best candidate. We've already seen his mayoral campaign, his mayoral tenure, and it's just a complete flop. What a bum. But you know what? You know, I thought a lot about this. I don't think it's a good move. I think okay, on the short term, it may be a great political strategy, but since it's a Democratic stronghold and the Democrats are ousting Eric Adams and they're not going to align themselves with him anyway, I don't see how he's going to get the alliance of the New York politicians. So I don't know. It's I think Trump should give him the same medicine he was giving Trump. Honestly, you know, at this point, I get the political strategy. I understand it, but it might help short term. But in the long term, I don't think it's going to help. And in the long term, I think that actually may be a stain for Donald Trump. I think that people say, "Oh wow, look, he gave Eric Adams a pardon before Eric Adams was even convicted." Because at this point, you can already see the deal has been sealed pretty much at this point. I mean, Eric Adams is showing his hand. He's showing the flag right now. He's slick. I got to tell you, God bless him, though. When you say he's a character, man, that guy lands in gold. It doesn't matter what it is. So hats off to him. He will be the man of the year. So maybe the Spanish Society had it right this whole time.
That's true. That's true. All right, listen. So sorry to keep you guys waiting, but it's some stuff I think we just needed to talk about and get that out of the way. So that was good. Let's get on to the overtime. Let's get on to NYPD overtime. So obviously NYPD's been blowing the overtime out, right? And that's due to the lack of manpower. But we've consistently said how forcing people to do enormous amounts of overtime hinders morale, right? Really hinders morale. It really does not help cops physically. It doesn't help them mentally. Doesn't help public safety. I mean, we've all been there, Eric. You know, I've worked days on end. So have you. I mean, I've literally been sick to my stomach. There's been days where I didn't sleep for 3 days, and I was literally throwing up because I was so tired that my body just couldn't handle being up any longer. And I was like physically sick and still had to work, still had hours to go, you know? And so I think that's happened to, not people who have it very good in the NYPD, not people who can make, $400,000 and sleep while they're on overtime and things like that. Not those type of people. I'm talking about actually doing the work. You're getting back-to-back details into a midnight, back into a detail. Zero sleep. You're out there. You're maybe getting, I never could sleep in the car. I never would, but you probably should have for your own health and your own mental sanity physically. So it's like overtime's a double-edged sword, in my opinion, and it's a necessity. And as we lose cops, it becomes even more of a necessity. So I think it's a real tightrope overtime. Like, how do you perceive police overtime?
It looks like Juju renamed himself as the YouTube user. Anyway, I remember working so much overtime. Actually, I remember one time just working around the clock, doing great getting guns. And I enjoyed it being with the guys. The camaraderie was amazing. But I remember just sometimes just being so tired. And I remember one time I was typing up a 49, our active retired members, NYPD, you know what a 49 is. For outside agencies, a 49 is a typed up form when you describe an unusual occurrence, something that's important, that may be newsworthy, or something where the chiefs of the department need to be notified. So I would type up my 49s, and I remember one time I was just so tired, and I remember I told one of my guys, listen, I'm really tired. Can you do me a favor? Can you take a look at this and just proofread it real quick? He looked over, he started laughing. He was like, oh, my God. It was a mess because I was just so exhausted. So, listen, it happens. What I think is interesting about the scuttlebutt I heard about the overtime plan to actually take the weight off cops right now, I think with such a diminished police department as it is, by the way, Crazy 10-7, shout out to you, $4.99 to the podcast, says money well spent. Yeah, we get some coffee and donuts. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And Eric, $1.99, shout out to you, man. Cup of coffee right here. Thank you. Cream, no sugar, please. Anyway, so.
Men don't put cream in that coffee.
Is that right? You drink it black? If with such a diminished police department, I don't think this plan could actually work. If it's as diminished as from what I'm hearing, because I speak to cops, sergeants, I speak to lieutenants every day. Like, oh my God, they're so overworked. Lieutenants are working as cops. There's no rank right now because they're so diminished. I think that it's not going to change anything. I think they're still going to have to force cops because they're so diminished. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think that, I think we point out a lot of the gaslighting that happens when it comes to this administration, when it comes to the unions. And so, the rumor is that the NYPD cap, the individual cap on officers, it's been going on for years and years. I think everyone that came in the NYPD, probably the last 50 years, was like, wait, why can't I work overtime? And this guy doesn't want it. I want it, but I can't take this hour. And now, so you're going to force him to do it, or vice versa. And I can't break that cap. So let's say, for those of you that aren't cops, so we talk about the overtime cap. Let's just say the cap is 40, for this next 3 months. Sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 60. It depends how it rolls, what the overtime looking like, what the flavor of the month is, what's going on in New York City. But let's say the cap is 40 hours a month. You're only allowed to make 40 hours of overtime for the month. Now, most overtime that cops do, it's not like, oh yeah, I'm going to work today. It's not like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to stay 2-3 hours. Yes, some guys get the opportunity to do that. Some investigative units, you're able to do that. But even them, like when you're a cop, you don't know when you walk into work in the morning or in the night when you're coming home. You just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen that's going to keep you as part of your regular duties. Right? So you might get stuck. You're a patrol sergeant. You're a patrol cop. It might be the end of your shift. And like Eric was just talking about doing a 49. If you're a patrol sergeant, there were nights I would have 5, 6 49s to do at the end of my tour. I didn't go home. I went home for like a few hours. I went home. I showered. I slept a little bit. I came right back to work. Same thing when you're a patrol cop. There were nights. There were times I was on a midnight and I made a collar and I worked all the way through to my next midnight. And then I did my tour on the midnight. I didn't go home till the next day. So I actually worked like 3 shifts. When you're doing anti-crime, you're making arrests or you're on patrol and you get stuck on a bad job and now there's nobody to cover you, right? Like just let's say you go to a crime scene, a shooting, a rape, something horrible, and we have to secure that scene overnight until the squad could get there, ECT could get there, or a crime scene can get there, take all the evidence out, and you're securing that crime scene. You might be there, the same thing I just said, that instead of processing an arrest and going down to the district attorney's office and putting all the evidence in, you might just be standing on that crime scene because of the lack of manpower the whole day until your next shift starts. So like police overtime is rarely where you're picking it. More often than none, you're going to get assigned it. Now let's bring it to New York City, where we're the center of parades, we're the center of protests, we're the center of everything, right? Every parade, any type of parade you could think of, every protest you could think of, and cops are getting ordered to do that overtime consistently. Events, festivals, parades, protests. I mean, how many protests they do this year? Like 5,000, something like that. You're just getting ordered left and right, left and right, left and right, left and right. So you're not really controlling your cap. The job controls your cap. The things that you encounter that month control your cap. But let's say you hit the 40 hours of overtime that month. They're like, you can't go over. If I hit my cap and anything happened after that, I went over. And I just documented. I documented it in my book. I was like, I'm not doing this for free. I'm not taking any time. I had tons of time built up. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I was like, I don't want to stay here. I didn't want to go to these details. I don't want to do this stuff. I'm here. I might as well make the money. But what would happen is some guys would have no overtime because they would have, whatever it is, maybe they had a lucky month. Maybe they avoided a lot of things. Maybe they were scamming. I don't know. But they had no overtime or didn't want overtime. You're at your cap. Something comes up and you're like, I'll do that. Oh, you can't do it. You're at your 40 hours a month. He's got to do it. But he doesn't want to do it. And I do. Is the city saving money by not giving it to him and giving it to me?
Yeah, that's the stupidest thing. I mean, the only time they're actually saving money is if they say, okay, the guy with 10 years on the job can't do the overtime. Let's give the overtime to the rookie. They never say that. But that would be the only time that you're saving money, right? Because there's a pay disparity, and now the overtime is substantial. But again, does it make a difference? I never understood that either. If John and I have the same amount of time on the job and we're the same rank and we're both doing the same job, why does it matter if John did 80 hours of overtime and I did 20? If I don't want to do the 80 and John wants to do it, he's a willing participant, aren't you going to get a better product? I never understood that. But no. John can't do it. Force Eric. Make Eric, he has to come in on his day off because John has 80 hours already. We have to get it to match. That I never understood. It was a horrible plan. That was something that was going on for years. So if they could actually change that, that would be something that's positive with this administration. But I think they're not doing this because it makes sense. They're doing this right now because these guys are just so overworked. And the morale is terrible, unlike what John Shell has to say. So, again, but I don't think it's going to change anything. I think it's so diminished right now that guys will be forced anyway. So shout out to Eric. Same name, brother. More coffee and donuts. $4.99 says, good morning, guys. You guys have a great YouTube channel. I also want to let you guys know I messaged you on your website and on Facebook. Thank you so much, Eric. We will get back to you. If there's a different handle, just let us know what it is so we know it's you, so we can correlate that. I appreciate it. I will say this. Listen, I don't miss everything about the job. And there's some things I miss. I think there's things we'll always miss. And what I do miss is, for me, the morale and camaraderie amongst my teams were amazing. So I remember doing so much overtime. Man, these guys used to have me laughing every day. You know what it is? These guys became my brothers, my family. Still talk to them. And just sometimes we would all do so much overtime and would be exhausted in the morning before work. I was training. So sometimes, it's now 6 a.m. We got a gun arrest. We're on overtime. We're working, and I'm sitting, typing away. And sometimes I literally would just pass out with my head while I was typing. Or I would sit down on the couch. I'm like, listen, I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm just going to sit here, just relax and regroup. And I would just pass out by accident. And then, next thing I know, the next day I have 1,000 memes on text messages with pictures of me and eggplants. John Shell, you'd probably be crying. Cass Daughtry, they can't take a joke. But it was hilarious, and I'd be laughing. So we always worked overtime. But now what I hear, it's just so bad. These guys are working so much overtime. And most of them, they're doing overtime, and they're not even doing their actual routine job. So I think that's what also causes problems with morale because, hey, at least if I'm doing overtime, I'm comfortable. I'm in my office. I'm at my command. We're back there doing a firearm arrest. I can dress down. I'm comfortable. I'm working. I'm working with my team. We're joking around. We're laughing. We got the music going. And we're working. We're pounding away. But now these guys are doing so much overtime, and I'm working at, the 110 precinct. Tomorrow I'm working somewhere in the subway. The next day I'm working some detail. The next day I'm working somewhere else. So that's taxing. It's exhausting, and that hurts morale. You're not in your command where you have your comfortable equipment. You're constantly on the move. I don't think this is going to change anything.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get to some comments. I agree with you. I don't think with a diminished department, you could actually manage the overtime properly because you weren't able to manage the overtime when we were fully staffed. So if you weren't able to manage it properly then, I don't have any confidence that they're able to do it now. I think this is gaslighting, but I do think it's a conversation that needs to be had, that needed to be had for years. I mean, everyone saw the flaw in having an individual cap. If you have a budget for the month, for the precinct, for all the guys, who cares how it's whacked up? Who cares if John wants 0 and Eric wants 160 hours? What does it matter? As long as you're not breaking the cap for the precinct or the borough or whatever it is, what does it matter what John or Eric does? Doesn't matter. We're the same rank. We're at the same salaries. They're not breaking it down by, John's tier 2 or John's at top pay and Eric's not, or Eric's an LSA and John's not. They're not looking at it like that. They'll never be able to figure that out. They can't even figure it out with the numbers. You know what I mean? Never mind they're going to individualize it like that. But let's get to some comments because I think we got a lot of good comments in here. I know you read the Jesse James one, but he has some good comments following up. So I'm just going to go over it again. I made over 800 hours of overtime this year. It's a lot, people. 800 hours is a lot of overtime. Think about that. Add that out, right? With over 21 years of service, I made a decision to retire. Last year, I had 385 hours. So we did double the amount of overtime, more than double the amount of overtime. All previous years, less than 200 hours as a patrol cop. I hit my 21st tour change in June. As per the contract, 21 tour changes and beyond, you're entitled to overtime and hours performed outside of your regular tour. So a tour change is I'm scheduled to come in at 1,800 hours, which is 6 p.m. to 02:05 in the morning. But whenever I get notified that I will not be performing an 1,800 start. I will be performing an 0700 start in the morning, the next morning, right? So I was tour changed. I was taking out of my regular tour. So the department, the new contract is now 21 tour changes. Ron Layson points out it used to be 15. That was other things that were given away under the Lynch administration, the pay for your own raise type of deal that we've been doing the last 20 years. That's still going to happen until you remove everyone that's in power and all of these benevolent associations. So you've been funding your own raises, if you guys haven't known, and you've been getting really bad deals for it too on top of it. Terrible. So now it used to be 15 tour changes. Now it's 21. Past 21 tour changes. So if a cop 21 times that year has their tour changed, now the whole tour change is overtime. So listen to what Jesse Change says now. He had 60 tour changes he received, right? So 39 of those tour changes, right? Am I right? Am I doing the math? Yeah. 39, sorry, I failed math, people. 39 of those tour changes were full overtime. So we get 60 of them, right? 60 tour changes I received, allowing me to make over 300 hours of overtime just from that. Now that shows the tale right there, how diminished this department is. You tour change somebody 60 times. And not only is it, Jesse, first of all, I don't know how you would be able to keep up doing 800 hours year after year. I wouldn't want to see your mental health and your physical health in 5 years, what that does to you. So I don't even think anyone could sustain doing that. So I'm glad you're in your 21st year. Could you imagine guys that are in their second and third year and they're not even at top pay and they're not even really seeing the money and they're getting 800 hours and it's not even pensionable? I can't imagine what your future looks like, what you're thinking in your head. Like, can I possibly do this? Can I physically, mentally be able to do this? I never see my family. I don't go to any events. I don't see my kids. My wife hates me because I'm never home. Everything she asks me to do, I say no. My house is a disaster because when I'm home, I'm dead. I'm sleeping. I don't know. Can you physically do 800 hours a year after year for 20 years?
No way. That would be exhausting. For someone in their 20th year, even at that point, it's super exhausting. You got to be burnt out. Not only that, you have to do, if you're going to do 800 hours because you want it to be pensionable, you have to do it for 2 years, right? Because only 20% more in your pay that following year is pensionable. So if I did 200 hours, as Jesse James saying, if he did in his 20th year, he said he did 21 years. If he did his 20th year, 200 hours, in the following year, he did 800 hours, not all that pay would be pensionable because you can only do 20% more to be pensionable. So you actually have to possibly keep this up for about 3 years, which is just insane. You'd be burnt out. So I was just doing the math. I think you have to have, if I'm right, John, from what I remember, I think it's 243 appearances that you have to have. So if he did 60 tour changes for 243 appearances, someone, if you have the PBA book, let me know. I'm pretty sure it was 243 appearances. That's almost 20. That's 24.6%. That's almost 25%, which means a quarter of the time Jesse James was being tour changed. Now it's probably even worse. A quarter. Think about that. A quarter of his time reporting for duty, he was being tour changed. To me, that kills morale. That's very taxing. Think about it. Every time you come to work tomorrow, normally you work 6 to 9 to 2 in the morning. Tomorrow you're doing a day tour. Then the following day you're doing a 4 to 12. Then the next day you're doing a midnight. You're constantly being tour changed. What does that do to your body? What does that do to your clock? What does that do to morale, right? You might have things going on at home. I mean, John, you talk about now you're a dance daddy. You have the ability to take your kids to dance. What if you're a woman at work? And not only that, you're a woman right now in the police department, and maybe you're breastfeeding, you just had a baby, you're back to work, and you work at 4 to 12, you're working a day tour, then you're constantly being tour changed. How are you seeing your kid? How are you actually, what are you doing your motherly duties to take care of your kids? If you're a man, how are you actually, I always talk about training, so important to take care of yourself. But it's really hard to, under these circumstances, under these conditions, you work in a night tour, then you work in a day tour, to make the training. That's why the police department has to find a way to allot it. So even if they say, you know what, John, you can go do 120 hours and Eric wants to do 20, with a diminished police department, it's not happening. This looks great on paper, but it's just not going to work. Absolutely not. The bottom line is it's not going to work, and I think they know it. I think they're trying to sell something they know is not going to work.
Yeah, so Tony ESU said the commanding officers always wanted everyone to move up the ladder, overtime ladder equivalently. Why not just let the guys who want to do overtime do it and the guys who don't leave them alone? And that's what's being proposed. But what we're saying is more than likely it doesn't happen. And Patrick Donahue, in my opinion, I believe he nails it here when he says the overtime giveaway is a sign of the inability for the department to properly formulate crime reduction strategies. It's the equivalent of throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what works. And like we've been saying that over and over again, right? Like not everything needs to be a photo opportunity. True public safety isn't a one deputy commissioner of operations showing up at the scene where crimes are happening with a team of a ginormous amount of people where tons of money is spent doing videos and Twitter photos. It's great to do every now and then. I'm not saying not to do it, but that's your crime fighting strategy, and that's what they're doing for everything. True public safety is you're not the deputy commissioner of operations sitting in his office and he has how many? There's 77 precincts in the NYPD. There's 77 different teams handling the problems in that precinct. They don't need the deputy commissioner of operations on scene. He could show up and give them a morale boost and show up with some of his guys and help out now and then when they need some specialized equipment, if they need the drones, if they need some cars to get done what they need to get done, and maybe if they need some extra bodies. I get it. But what we see is Kaz Daughtry, he's working hard, but he's not working smart. He's at work at 5 o'clock in the morning. He's at work until 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's doing that 7 days a week, and he's on scene everywhere. He's at every press conference. He's doing everything. Again, I said it over and over again. He reminds me of the kid that's in traffic that gets a chance to go play anti-crime, and he's running around in an unmarked car and plain clothes, and you're like, yo, dude, chill out, bro. We are trying to get bad guys here. Stop stopping the 13-year-olds. Stop worrying about the kid riding a skateboard on the sidewalk. Stop bothering the kid that's riding his bike on the sidewalk. He's 10. He's 10. We want them to ride. I know it's illegal, but we want them to ride the bike on the sidewalk. We don't want to show up to someone. So that's what I see when I watch this. I'm like, this is not a true public safety plan. We're giving away the overtime because, one, they already gave it away, and so now you have to cover your tracks. 2, they agreed to things in city council that they would never be able to meet. They've presented budgets with the overtime on there, knowing they would never be able to stay within that budget, and then continuously gaslight everyone. No, morale's fine. We're doing great. Everybody's doing great. We're just going to work them. If you could just keep working from now till the rest of your life, that'll be great. No problem.
Yeah, shout out to Patrick Donahue, a friend, great brother to the podcast. Always here. We appreciate it. Always has great snarky remarks. Makes me laugh sometimes. His sarcasm is awesome. But he's right. His sarcasm is on fire. But he's right. Because the bottom line is, I say this is not going to work. It's completely ineffective. Sounds great on paper. I know cops get excited about it, but they're not doing the math. So according to Jesse James, did 800 hours of overtime. So let's rhetorically speaking, if he did 800 hours and every cop is going to do 800 hours, at some point you need to go home. You need to recuperate. It's impossible. If they're doing that much overtime, then other cops will still be forced, and they'll still be forced to do overtime. Now, don't get me wrong, John. At the same time, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be forced to do any overtime. You know, that's part of being in police work. It's part of law enforcement that you understand that you might be involved in a situation where you're forced to do overtime. It's unplanned. That's part of policing. That's part of the culture. But it has to be manageable. And what we see right now is just completely excessive because of diminished manpower. So they need to release the actual manpower to the public and tell the truth. And tell the truth that this department is hemorrhaging. And we need a legit recruitment effort. But it takes real leadership. It takes many changes to get to the point where people actually want it, to see the NYPD being viable. And anyone who thinks that the PBA is sticking up for you, they sold you out. Look, it used to be 15 tours until you had overtime pay for your tour changes. Now it's 21. Exactly what John said. They paid for their contracts. This prior administration under Pat Lynch did nothing special for you. And under Pat Hendry, nothing has changed. Same horse, different color. It's the same game. Business as usual. Their slogan should be packed courtrooms. That's all they can do for you. They can't do anything else other than packed courtrooms. This overtime is out of control. You cannot work effectively like this. I mean, you know, I see it. I spent some time overseas in other countries, and people are much more relaxed. They have less stress. They go to work for a couple hours. They take a couple hours break. They come back. It's a much different environment. Now, I'm not saying it's a different animal in New York City, but to work, constantly working, you're burning the oil on the both ends. It's going to affect your mental mindset. It's going to lead to depression. A depressed cop is not going to be an effective cop. It altogether leads to trauma. And meanwhile, you know, if you're a man, you're at work 7 days a week, all day, every day. You're not home with your wife. You're not home with your kids. You're not seeing your home. They need that also. You need that work balance. A good administration, good leadership would want their cops to be home because they're going to be better at work. And these cops are, listen, they're burning the oil so much right now. I don't care what plan they came out with. You know, we saw that, if this is a rumor or not. The bottom line is it is not going to work, and they know it. That's the part that drives me crazy, is they know it, but they still do it anyway because they are gaslighting one-on-one. That's this administration. We'll just gaslight. Look, Kaz Daughtry said it. The cops, they're fine. They don't even know what's going on with the potential corruption. It's the same thing here. Yeah, we'll make them believe that they're, that they get to pick their overtime. I mean, come on right now. I would love to see, I guarantee the pay detail numbers are down because these cops are constantly being forced to work on the job. I guarantee there's less cops doing pay detail. I don't have the data, but I would put my money on it. Snake Plissken, shout out to you. Always giving money to the podcast. Coffee and donuts. Thank you so much. Said, show me the money. Show me the money. Hey, listen, Snake Plissken, maybe you're somebody that wants to do the overtime. That's what it is. For someone who wants to do it, yes, let them to do it. But for cops that don't want it, it can even out. But with this diminished department, it doesn't make a difference. Everyone's going to be forced whether you want it or not.
I agree. And if it was up to me, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of paid detail. I never actually even did one. I wouldn't do one. And if I had the choice, if I needed to do it because I needed the money, I would choose the NYPD overtime every day of the week. It's pensionable. It's more money. I'm putting money in my 401. I'm putting money in my 457. I'm putting money in my ITHP, my 50. So I would choose the NYPD anytime, any day of the week. So the guys that need the money, I think it's a good stress reliever for them. I still think as much as I think that it is, I think it is a morale boost, and I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. So I'm glad that the conversations are at least being had. I don't know how honest the conversations are. Is it just gaslighting? Because that's consistently what we see. The other conversation is they're going to make the CJB process easier when you make collars, things of that nature. That's been being said for years. I mean, that's been being said my entire career. I heard that. Oh, we're making it easier. You guys aren't going to have to transport. I never cared. I honestly, I never really cared about the transport because the more and more arrests I started to make, I started to realize I don't want anyone else touching somebody that I arrested. I don't want anyone else dealing with them. I want to make sure they have nothing on them from the time I have them to the time they get lodged into central booking for good. And I don't want to know anything after that, right? I don't know. All I know is they had nothing when I brought them in the precinct. They had nothing when I took them out of the precinct. They had nothing when they were lodged into CJB. I don't know anything else after that. I never trusted other people transporting what would happen, especially when you start to put perps together. And I always feared people not tossing their perps properly and them getting together and who switched what, who took what from who. And so like, to me, I never minded doing the transport, and it was actually extra money. Like, cause usually my arrest would go in, there would always be a ton of vouchers associated with them, which is like arrest evidence or whether it was safekeeping. And that's where I really made the money, is vouchering stuff on overtime, and it wasn't because I was sitting there trying not to do it. I was trying to do it properly and correctly, because what are we always taught? Prisoners, property, and money. That's how you're going to get jammed up, right? And there's another P in there that I'm not going to add, but so
that one got me too.
Yeah.
At Alva 91 says, and this is true, I remember talking to a retired female officer. She spoke of being suicidal and she looked worn out. I didn't get to hear you guys talk about it. Wow. Yeah, it's so true. And I remember on the job, and what I hear now is far worse. I speak to cops every day. It's far worse right now. I remember on the job, sometimes going to functions and going to parties or going to union meetings because I was a delegate, and just sometimes looking around the room and looking at myself, I said, wow, we look beat up. We just look like the life was sucked out of us, just we look beat up. Some guys are young and just like, you just see those droopy eyes and say that this job takes a lot out of you. So right now it must be far worse. I mean, how many times, John, have you seen it? I seen, when I was at the precinct, someone would retire and you see them come back in a year and you're like, oh my God, that guy looks great, man. Like, wow, like 10 years younger. Like, after they retire, it's like they get their color back. They're smiling again. Like, they just look like 1,000 times better after retirement. It's like you just say, wow, look what this job does to you. And you see now it's just far worse. That's why I think this thumbnail is spot on. This is what happens. It just destroys it. Here's this iconic figure right now. Check out his patch if you haven't looked at the party department. But, his face is completely drawn. He's got no color left. He's all beat up because he's just overworked. And it happened. I'm sure, John, it probably happened to you. I've seen plenty of times guys come back and like, man, wow, it looks like a different person. Even people told me the same thing. Like, man, they said, you look great. You can see, you just, and even sound different. And I was like, you know what? I never realized it, but I think, the job takes a lot out of you. It does. And right now it's far worse. So my hat's off to the men and women that are still doing the job right now, that are under this leadership, just completely getting abused. I mean, for general population, there are some people that have it pretty good. So, what is your take on that? Have you seen that too? Just people come back and look great?
Dude, I mean, I literally see people and I'm like, wow, you got younger, dude. You look like you know, I saw a lieutenant I used to work with, and he was like, you know, he was always in shape guy, but he started to like lose himself as he was getting older, as he was getting up there in years. And I seen him after he was retired about a year. And, you know, he was starting to get heavy. He was starting to get like fat around his belly. I mean, even though he was working out, you could just see. And then I see him about a year later, and he looks like he's 17, dude. He's like, his muscles are bulging. He's got his shirt tucked in. I was like, what did you get younger, dude? He's like, oh, when you're home, you get to take care of yourself. And when you sleep, he's like, sleep's real important, dude. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're right, man. He's like, you know, and I get to like prepare my meals, and I get to take care of myself, you know, and I get to, you know, so I see people get younger all the time. And then like, I don't look at pictures much, but I don't know why we were going through pictures, but me and my wife were going through photos one night. And like, it was like, I just watched, I looked at every picture, and in every picture, I'm pale white. I have bags under my eyes. I look like I haven't slept in forever. And that was because I hadn't. You know, I was always up. And like, you know, it's just one of those things. Like, you just can't, like, you don't see it when you're in it. You know, I didn't know that was the state I was in, but that's kind of, I think when people retire, they, you know, if they have sense, they start to focus on themselves if they could, and really focus on their health and their longevity. And even if they go get other careers, it's usually a lot different. It's a lot easier. I know for me, the overtime, the excessive overtime, really, it catches up to you, dude. It catches up to you in retirement too, because that mentality of always being on the go, always being awake, when you don't have to have that anymore, we're addicted to that forever. So it's kind of a hard thing to break. You know, it's kind of a hard thing to break. I still find myself sometimes in very peaceful situations, and I'm like, why do I feel like I need to be doing something right now? And I don't know what it is, you know? And it's like, it's a weird feeling. Urban Taunt says creating PTSD. I agree. Snake Pliskin says, show me the money. $4.99 to the podcast. Maldo says, stop. We know you were sleeping in the car. I wasn't, dude. I never slept in the car. You could ask any of my guys. I had the flu, anything. You can ask anybody I ever worked with. Wasn't me, bro. Never slept in that car. I never felt comfortable in that car. I didn't care where I worked, what we were doing. There was some days I was passing out in the car. I'm not going to lie, but I never slept in that car. Sleepy Joe 555. He said, we all heard that lieutenant is the best rank on the job. Do you think that still holds true today? We spoke about this recently, and I think the lieutenant at this point is just a glorified sergeant. You get to wear a cool white shirt, and that's about it at this point. You're just basically a sergeant. You're the patrol sergeant. And you actually have more responsibility, because now not only do you have to worry about your whole entire platoon, you have to worry about the sergeants that are underneath you as well. But yet you have no time to do anything different than they're doing. You know, if you're on patrol. Now, if you're a lieutenant in a detail, yeah, absolutely, it's a great job. But if you're a sergeant in a detail, it's a great job, right? But if you're on patrol, if you're out there doing enforcement, I don't think the lieutenant's any different from being a sergeant. It's basically you're a glorified sergeant at this point, and that's due to the diminishment of the police department. Read the patrol guide, dude. Read the job of a desk officer. Read the job of a patrol supervisor. Then start to read the admin guide, what you're really responsible for as a sergeant. It's impossible to do those jobs. Then add yourself as a lieutenant and add all the other added responsibility, and tell me it's possible when you don't get a moment to yourself. You're doing roll calls. You're going out there answering 911 calls. You're picking up jobs yourself. How are you managing when you're in the trenches? You're not.
That's actually a good question. I think that every rank is awesome. You got to enjoy it while you're there at that time. Like, I enjoyed just being a cop. I mean, I had sometimes more fun as a cop than I did as a lieutenant. I mean, you're with your partner doing patrol. I mean, we would laugh our asses off. You know, we had a good time. And there was less responsibility, right? The only responsibility was for myself and for my partner. So I could come in and not really have that on my mind. But I enjoyed it. And then being a sergeant was awesome. I had my first team. You have a small group of guys. And again, you're responsible. Sergeant is a very laboring job. You're working hard. Do you have a lot of responsibility? Yes and no. But lieutenant, is an amazing job. I enjoy being a lieutenant because now you're actually part of management. So your voice is more important to a point. The beauty about being a lieutenant, if it's such a big incident, right, you push it up to the captain. If it's smaller, you can push it down to like the middleman. You kind of like, you're holding both scales. I loved it. If you have the ability to manage people above you and you know how to manage people below you, lieutenant is awesome. So, and shout out to Patrick Donahue. Patrick Donahue, we got to meet up with you one day and have a couple of cigars. You made me laugh, brother. $9.99 into the podcast, getting more coffee and donuts. Bring back precinct club parties, bus trips to AC, and urinal piss targets. Urinal piss targets with the faces hated bosses. These are time-proven morale boosters in the NYPD. Patrick Donahue, we would have fun, brother. You're definitely a style, brother.
Yeah, no, it's hysterical. The precinct club parties. I got to be honest, I was on a few of those buses and I watched thousands of dollars be exchanged in dice games. I was like, these guys are out of their mind. I was never a big drinker, but so I'm like sitting there like, what the hell? I was like, I saw people lose thousands of dollars before they ever got to Atlantic City. So I was like, wow, I was like, these degenerates, so fun. But they were good times, definitely morale boosters. Definitely things need to be done, I think, to improve morale. I think that like I said, I think overall, like lifting the cap individually, it's a positive. Like, how big of a positive is it? I don't think it's much, and I don't know that it'll be able to be managed. But again, at least it's being brought up, and it's something I think that every cop in the NYPD has always talked about.
Well, John, speaking of things that just totally destroy morale, I remember towards the end of my career, when we started to really lose manpower, and certain people have some leadership flaws. And I remember we would have barbecues in the back of the precinct. And Julie Murill would get pissed off that we're having a barbecue in the back of the precinct. I remember that's what we would do, right? That boosts morale. I'm in the back having a hamburger, and like, what are you doing? I'm like, having a hamburger, and having a hamburger with the guys. Well, who's out there? There's plenty of people out there. We got it handled. So that's part of the camaraderie. And then they really start to crack down on that. I mean, come on, that's camaraderie. That's morale. We're not going to hang out there and drink beers and have a barbecue all day, but we're stopping there. We're eating in the back. We're not sitting down and eating at a place. We're eating, we're building the camaraderie. It builds morale. It's a great morale booster. They just started to slowly chip away and take things away. So right now, with these guys doing extreme amount of overtime, I can't imagine that they're having any camaraderie. I'm sure they're not having any barbecues in the back of a precinct. They don't even have time. But those were the good times. You have to have those good times. Good leaders should say, you know what, make me a burger too. But that's not what we saw. We saw, grumbling faces and people upset by it. And I don't really care. I mentioned names on here. If they don't like it, too bad. So what?
Yeah, so all right, we got 600 people on here. Thanks for joining this morning. We're talking about NYPD overtime policy. Rumor that it's the individual cap for officers is going to be lifted. We also talked about potentially Tom Donlin stepping down and Ben Tucker replacing him. But let's stay on the overtime. So Ron Layson says they do look at the amount. The list has a number of hours, but it also has a monetary value. Commands are allotted a dollar amount. Guys who are afraid to justify who they give it to abuse the rookies. 100%, there is a dollar amount listed on there, and lifting the cap still kind of, unless you're going to sit there and really micromanage the overtime like a maniac, and I don't recommend anyone do that because it will just drive you up the wall. Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not touching that cap, I could see you be worried about breaking the cap. I see that. But at the end of the day, you got slots to fill. You got guys that want to do it, and you got guys that don't. If you go over a little bit, it is what it is. I had to. This was my guy. It is what it is. Eric's SDS. Eric's an LSA, and John's a lazy lieutenant, and John doesn't want to do the overtime. It is what it is. Like, I don't. I need both of them for whatever various reasons. And I gave it to Eric, and he blew me out a little bit. So, and then I think when we look at the overtime, though, it's almost at this point, it's so necessary that I don't see how it's ever going to be alleviated, because the other part of the statement wasn't just that they're going to lift the cap. They're going to allow guys that don't want to do the overtime to not do some overtime within reason. But what is that reason? And are there limits? And here's my other question, Eric, should there be limits on overtime?
Should there be limits on an individual basis, or do you mean as far as a command?
On an individual basis.
I would say yes. There should be a limit on an individual basis, depending on because of that reason. Like, yes, if there's someone that's willing to do 200 hours a week, at the same point, we need good management says, listen, we can't have you overworked. Also, we need you to be effective. It's just not feasible. There should be this, especially if you're going to do patrol. If you're going to do something where you're going to be in a car and you're carrying your firearm, you need your rest. There should be, you shouldn't have 3 days in a week in a row where you only have 2-hour gaps between each tour. At some point, we need management to say, well, listen, you need 8 hours. Go home. You need a good night's sleep before you come back to work in order for you to be effective. I know even when I was in the Marines, they didn't want you to drive the trucks unless you had a certain amount of sleep, to be effective. So the same thing for the police department. We need good management to say, hey, listen, you just worked 16 hours straight, and I know you need the money, but to come back in 3 hours to do patrol, and you're going to be in a car with your firearm, it's just not effective. That's good management. Where you can say, oh, if you're coming back in 3 hours, you do something administrative somewhere you're safe, that's something different. So I do think there needs to be limitations because it's good management and good leadership, but not necessarily for monetary value. Should it be a limit? Well, John gets 60 hours and you get 20 for that reason to even out. No, I think it should be a limit because it's in your best benefit to be a better employee, to be a more effective cop. But again, I think a lot when it comes to overtime is structure. So we need better structure. We need to restructure and reformulate this job. Like, for instance, One Police Plaza. I get it. It's a soft target. It's important to have security. But anyone that's ever worked the security detail at One Police Plaza, when you get flown in there or detailed out to One Police Plaza, if you look at it, a lot of it is redundant and doubled up. Some of these security posts that they have, and they have 2 and 3 posts that are right near each other, and it doesn't make sense. I get it at the time of 9/11, and even today with the threats that we have, it could definitely be restructured. I've seen a lot of the posts, like that post didn't make any sense. It was completely unnecessary. And the post is still there because some cop is there for 20 years making a substantial amount of overtime, and they don't want to move it for that reason. So we need restructure of a lot of locations. I mean, we have soft targets. Our precincts are soft targets. We have barely any security at the front of these precincts. But yet at One Police Plaza, we have more security than we need. So a lot of the job needs restructuring.
I don't agree. I don't agree at all.
On what part?
On that, we have too much security at One Police Plaza. I don't agree.
Have you seen the security on the outside?
I worked at One Police Plaza for a year. Yeah,
quite often.
I worked there for a year. I saw several breaches of security. I saw exactly why they were breached, and they were breached because of lack of manpower. And the other reason they were breached is they have guys that have institutional knowledge of how security runs in that building, and they're flying them out, and they're bringing in people who have no idea how security runs in that building, and so they're missing the mark on it. I think it's a big building. I think it's a hard place to secure. You actually need a lot of guys there. I don't think they actually staff it properly, to be honest with you.
Well, that's my point. So we actually agree. And I'm not saying that there's not enough people. What I'm saying is there's a lot of spots. Remember, I'm saying there's 2 or 3 spots that didn't make sense. Like, you have 2 or 3 guys in this one spot here. And again, you're flying guys in. If I'm working at PSA 7, Police Service Area 7, in the South Bronx, and that's not my daily routine, and I actually haven't had meetings and understand really the nomenclature of One Police Plaza, I'm not effective. I'm just watching my small zone that day. So I think a lot of it didn't make sense. That's what I'm saying about as far as manpower. Do they need security? Yes, but it needs to be restructured to where it's working properly so that you don't need people to fly in, so that it's based on the people that actually work there, which causes a problem. Why does someone from PSA 7 have to go work there, stand overtime? You're pretty much useless. You just pull that person away from PSA 7. They're working at one police plaza. They don't know the nomenclature, never been involved in any meetings. They're just there one day. They're just a body, and it's not really effective. Do they really know what to canvass, what to look for? Are they as effective as someone as assigned there? Absolutely not.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could start by not putting our friends in charge of 1PP security, just because they're friends of Kaz Daughtry, and take out people who were actually effective and knew how to run the place. So that could be somebody with actually a background or understands it, or somebody that worked there and understands like what's happening. But yeah, there's a lot of things like that on the job. There's you're flying people out at the same time you're flying people in to cover for that guy. Makes no sense. And then when you look at the squads, it's the same thing. We talk about caseloads with detectives, you talk about caseloads and sex crimes, and you see they're consistently rising. Why are they consistently rising? Because they're out doing transit overtime. They're out on a foot post. They're out babysitting on a protest when they should be investigating their cases. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, the squad's messed up. These guys don't know what they're doing. It's like, no, they don't. They're at their desk 2 days a week. Like, how do you want them to keep up with the ever-growing caseload? It's never going to happen. Logic's Finest said it's been studied and proven. 10 hours, all productivity drops like a rock exponentially, meaning productivity drops more and more every hour after 10 hours in a day. I agree, and that's what we're saying, and that's why I'm saying I think there does need to be a cap. Because the same way a trained boxer could go out in the ring and fight till he's dead, right? He's trained his body enough. He's so used to being in that ring, he could kill himself in the ring, right? So we have people step in, stop him. No, that's it. This fight's over. This fight is over. Not fighting 30 rounds. The guy could go 30 rounds. You're not fighting that. You're not fighting anymore. You're not going past this round. It's not good for you. So the same way we need people to step in with trained police officers who might need the money, but will work themselves to death, right? Because there's just, like we've been saying, it's unhealthy, especially if you're actually really doing the overtime. You're really out there on the foot post. You're really out there patrolling. If you have that warrior mentality and you're out there doing your job, there needs to be a cap. What that is, I think that should be studied. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor, but there should be studies on humans. We have limitations, and how we haven't figured out what those are at this point in humanity. I have no idea, yet we sit here and pretend like we're the smartest generation ever. We have all this technology, but we don't use it. We don't know what's a good diet for people. We don't know how to individualize diets for people, workouts, anything. It's all over the place. And we can't tell you how much you should sleep, what's required sleep, how often you should do it, how much you should work, how much you shouldn't. So they won't look at that. Tony ESU brings up another good point here. One of the reasons why they made ESU detectives unlimited tour changes. It's more money for cops, but tour changes are abused by the department.
Yeah, I think the tour changes are abused. And I'm curious if people actually getting the overtime pay for their overtime changes, because I know that was because for their tour changes. I know that was one thing that was always a fight for myself and other police officers I saw when it came to getting the overtime for tour changes. That was a fight, and most people just kind of gave up on it. So to the union out there, don't just pack courtrooms. Make sure that your people are actually getting properly compensated. That is one thing that was contractual. That is always discussed in the contract. So now it's 21 tour changes. After 21 tour changes, every tour is supposed to be overtime. So make sure that that's happening. I don't think it's happening, to be honest. I don't think the police department is actually making sure that after tour changes that the cops or any rank are getting compensated for their overtime for those tour changes. I don't think so. I have my doubts about it. I definitely have my reservations. What do you think?
Wait, I'm sorry. I missed that. What did you say?
No, I think that when it comes to tour changes, as far as cops getting properly compensated because they exceeded those 21 tours, I doubt that they're actually getting paid for it. It's probably a fight.
Well, I mean, I think you definitely got to fight for it. I don't think anyone's just going to be like, oh, yeah, you're over the tour change, put in for overtime. I don't think anyone's letting you know. You know what I mean? I don't think, you got to track that on your own. If you're not tracking that on your own, nobody's telling you, oh, yeah. If you have a really good roll call person that's like, hey, 21 tour changes, hint, hint,
I think Drone Ranger nails it right here. If you actually tried to get paid for OT for your 22nd tour change, you'd be on a foot post for eternity. Absolutely right. And that's my point. Every time it was exceeded those contractual amount of tours and get compensated, I know it was a fight for cops, fight for myself, and most people just gave up because of that fight. Crazy 10-7 says, when you try to get paid for your changes, they just threaten you with something else, like changing your whole tour. Absolutely right. So that whole contractual thing needs to be thrown in the garbage. The union needs to stand up and fight, not just by packing courtrooms. Cops need to be compensated. I mean, look, Jesse James said that he had 60 tour changes. 60 tour changes. That's 25% of his actual tours worked for that entire year. That's a lot. 1/4 of the time getting your tour changed. That's exhausting. That's grueling. It takes a tax on you. It takes a toll on you. And I think I just want to go back and piggyback on what you said. I think that was a great analogy. That was probably your best analogy. That a boxer, that when the fight is over, that his team knows when to throw in the flag and call the fight. That's what I'm saying. There has to be limitations. Your management has to know, like, hey, you've done enough overtime. You're not going to be effective. You're going to be here so tired to the point that you're just going to be an empty suit, and it's not good for you. Right? Good leaders manage people, not manage things. They know what's good for you and what's also good for the job and what's good for public service. And they're able to have that work-life balance. That's what good leaders do. Good leaders should want their people to be in shape. They should want them to be healthy. They should be able to look at you and say, you know what, John, you're not looking too good today. You look tired. You're exhausted. You know what? Go take the rest of the day. Go home, get some rest. We got it handled. That's what good leaders do. That's what I expect.
Yeah, but again, the problem is the people that are going to notice that are the lieutenants and the sergeants, and they're overworked and stressed out and don't know what the hell's going on either. And they're in the same cycle of what's going on patrol, like the constant radio runs. They probably haven't got it even worse because they're getting calls from the bosses, they're getting calls from operations, they're getting calls from Kaz Daughtry, wants to know why this guy gave him a weird look. He felt like he looked at him weird. Or, John Sheldon think he got the respect he deserved. He likes standing ovations. Like, people didn't, so I think the problem is, like, we're eliminating the supervision as well. Now, forget the morale. Like, we took the morale. It's gone. The morale's been gone. It's gone. Right. The supervision's gone as well because you stole the morale from those guys, and then they're in that same cycle where they look like this guy on this meme. Like, this isn't a joke. Like, when I made this in my head, I did this for a reason. Like, and you see, there's an inspection guy. He looks well rested. His hair's perfect. He looks like he kind of aged well. He's right about on his retirement date, and he's showing the cop his whistle, right? And the cop's completely overworked at this detail. He looks like he hasn't slept in days. He has no color in his face. He's not eating right. He can't shave. His hair's a mess. This is not a lie. This is what I've seen throughout my career. I've seen people look like this. Some people have done this to themselves. Some people, most of them, the job's done this to them. Ron Layson says, equal distribution of overtime does not mean that everyone gets the same amount. It means you can't feed certain people and withhold it from others who want it. Also, if it's proactive overtime, I would always give it to the meat eaters, aka the crime fighters, no matter what they were at. I would justify it to my bosses when I was called out on it because those cops would do the job. They would either have good collars in the zone or they would have no crime in the zone because they were properly deployed and familiar with the crime. Send the inside people and patrol guys to outside OT details. Also, they do look at monetary value of the overtime. Commands are allotted at a dollar amount. Poor leaders would abuse the rookies. So that's what we were talking about before. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a good plan and that's what traditionally would happen. Like, right, your crime guys, your condition guys, you would get the overtime inside of the command and not fly them out because you knew you were getting more bang for your buck. And the people who you knew were just going to look the other way if something happened and really just put their uniform on and waste gas, they could fly out.
I think that's well said, brother. I agree with you. Like John said, it's a domino effect, and that's why fair leadership creates a problem and trickles down and stems throughout the entire department, through the department. So it failed leadership and it failed administration, not just this administration. I know people think that we pick on this administration, but it's prior administrations also that it's been failed for years on how to manage overtime. But just now, it's just so far worse. It's so egregious that we have failed leadership and failed overtime, failed plans, failed structure. We need to really formulate. We need a new plan. We need an overhaul on how we run the police department. Just as I was saying, one police plaza needs security, but it needs effective. It needs the people that work there. They should have constant meetings. There should be constant meetings about what's going on. Where are the potential holes? Where are the potential leaks? Where can it be breached? But by people that actually work there, not by people flying in. That's not effective. That's just putting bodies in there. It doesn't make any sense. If we're putting 30 bodies there, but those 30 bodies are useless and they're all from outside commands, it doesn't make sense. That's what I'm saying. It has to be effective. Work smarter, not harder. Again, I think this picture just speaks 1,000 words. It's easy to say, hey, buddy, what's going on with this whistle? And that just shows failed leadership. You should be able to look at your person and say, you know what, this guy needs rest. He's overworked. The candle's burning on both ends. You have to take care of your people. You have to be a people person to be a true leader. You actually have to look at your people and you have to know what they need, what they want, what makes them tick, what makes them better. Now, everyone's different. There is an average. I don't know what it is, right? I'm sure they say what average is 8 hours sleep is good sleep. For some people, it's 4 hours. For some people, it's 10. For some people, it's 6. But there has to be an average where we can gauge to say, you know what, this person just hasn't had any time. And what you're saying is absolutely right, John. It's a domino effect. If everyone's overworked, and I speak to these people on a constant basis, sergeants are working like cops. Lieutenants are working like sergeants. Some of these lieutenants are working like cops, and they don't even have the ability. That's the limitation right now. They don't have the ability to go out there and see the whole ball of wax, what's going on, because they're delved in, they're doing the actual work themselves. So they can't be effective leaders right now. We don't have the lieutenants working as lieutenants, being able to evaluate and analyze their people and see what they need and see what they want, because they're so shorthanded. The lieutenant is doing the job of a cop right now. So that's a huge problem step throughout the job. So they have to actually analyze and actually indicate what are the root causes, what's going on with the police department, what's failed so we can make it better. But instead, they're lying to the public. John Shell said it himself. How do they fight crime out there? How do they fight grumblings going on? By getting on this media tour, by speaking to the news, by fighting perception, by changing the truth. That's what's going on.
By controlling the narrative. And he's never going to stop. His personal ex is meh. I was hoping for more. I was hoping for some more stuff. So maybe we'll get it soon, but I'm sure it'll come at some point. But right now, his personal ex is just sitting there. Kaz Daughtry's personal ex with his pronouns, though, I can't see because he blocked me. So Kaz, unblock me. Come on, let's be friends. I told you I'll even buy a PlayStation, dude. We could play. So Rich Kentaff says, has anyone added up how many hours a day the lieutenant that made 400 G's a year had to work to make that? 19 hours a day, 365 days for the year is what I got. I don't know what it is. I didn't do the math. I know that there's got to be some retro thrown in there as well. Maybe 30, 40K, maybe 50K. I don't know. So you could take that out. But whatever it is, I know it's inhumane. I know that it's almost impossible to do. And I don't think anybody should be allowed to do that for their own personal health. Never mind any other reason. I just think it's unhealthy. Like, again, I think should there be some caps on overtime? There's got to be. It can't be. We're lifting the cap and you could do whatever you want. There's got to be some restraints. And I mean, if there were unions, I think that's what they would be looking at, is the longevity of these cops. How many years do you have to go? I mean, most of the job at this point is tier 3. Tier 2 guys, I get it. You guys are just looking in the distance. Yeah, my pension's going to be this. I only got to do this. I got a year, and I'm going to be in Florida doing a podcast. I'm going to go on the Finest Unfiltered. I see what you guys are seeing. It's different for you guys, right? Because your runway is not that long, right? You're doing 20, you're doing a year, you're doing 2 years. you see your landing pad. These dudes with 2-3 years on, 5 years on, 7 years on, they can't even they're flying over the ocean right now. They don't see that, and it's kind of unsustainable. So who was it? Jesse James said he was a union rep, so he made sure that any cop that was past 20 tour changes put in for overtime, that's a union rep. Shout out to you, Jesse James. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to look out for you guys instead of play nice with the CO. And boss, I ain't going to tell these guys. They don't even know about it. Don't worry, which is, I didn't know about any rules. Shame on me. Like I said, if I had to go back again in my career, that's the one thing I would do is understand the bylaws in every union I joined. I would be at every meeting, whether I was a union rep or not. Before I made sergeant, they actually wanted me to be a PBA union rep, and I had no interest. I was going to be sergeant, and that was it. I was like, I just had no interest in ever being in the union. And then, by the time I found out, it was too late. By the time I found out what was going on in my unions, it was too late for me to ever run or it was that was it. My days were numbered. So,
shout out to Jesse James, because listen, if you're a delegate, you should be also a leader, and that's actually leadership. He took it upon himself to make sure that his cops were being compensated. That's what a delegate should do. You're taking care of your people. You're managing people. You're not managing things. Listen, I've seen it throughout my career. I'm sure, John, you've seen it. In many commands, the PBA delegate has a cushy gig in the command. I think that's a problem. That's a problem because how far could that person actually push the envelope? Are they going to push the envelope that they actually lose their own cushy gig? And for me, I think it's a smart move for the commanding officer, right? Give the PBA delegate a cushy gig. Now you got that PBA delegate in your pocket, and they're not going to give you as much opposition, and they're not going to push that envelope so far. So, I think that's a problem. I think a PBA delegate should be on patrol. We don't see that quite often. I in most commands, or maybe being anti-crime, out there being a worker, someone that understands CCRB, someone that understands what it's like to be getting GO-15s. For our outside agencies, that's a General Order 15. We sit down with a tape-recorded interrogation. So I think that's important. To have proper leadership, you have to have people that are in the right positions. Ron Layson said that earlier. People have to be in the right spots. Absolutely. Right people, right spots. That's a huge problem. I mean, if you're a delegate and you got a sweet gig in the command, really, how far are you going to push it? You're going to give up your spot? I mean, these are things you have to question. So going forward, I think overtime is important. But again, you're right, John. I don't think – so what I'm saying is I don't think that there has to be an actual number. Like, okay, you know what? You need 4 hours between tours or 8 hours. I don't think we have to do it. This is not the military. We don't need specific numbers. I just think we need common sense. Everyone's different. That's why it's important to be good leaders and to know your people. They don't have time to lead, which you're right. But we need people to say, you know what, John, you've worked so much this week. You know what? You have those. You're a sergeant. You have those extra days off because of the FLSA lawsuit. Why don't you take the day? Go relax. Didn't you have something with your family you were talking about? Go enjoy with your family. Take the day. We need leadership like that. Have real conversations. I don't think there has to be a number because everyone's different, has a different threshold. Me, I don't require a lot of sleep. Everyone's different. Some people do require a lot of sleep, and I don't fault them for that. But we have to know how everyone ticks. What do you think? Do you think there should be a specific number, like you have to have 8-hour gaps, or you think it should be case by case?
Like I said, I think I think a lot of the times when I speak to like a lot of people, they have these great ideas. Oh, I did this. Leaders should do this. It's like, nah, take the work out of it, dude. This isn't Eric Dim's police department. This isn't Ron Layson's police department. This isn't John McCarty's police department. This is the New York City Police Department. There needs to be limits because there's going to be times you're not going to be able to be that leader, dude, or there's going to be times you're not there, or you're sick, or you're doing other things, or you have something else on your mind. The brain work should be taken out of it. I support lifting the cap. I think it helps morale, but I don't support it at the same time because there still needs to be you still need to be able to tell people, all right, you could do this, but you can't. There needs to be rules in place to save people from themselves, right? That's what we do as supervisors, right? As a supervisor in the NYPD, your job is to say no. Your job is to save your subordinates from themselves in life, in their careers, in decisions they're going to make on jobs and decisions they're going to make on arrest. That's your job. Your job is to fight the human element that happens to all of us in everybody, the laziness, the dumb thoughts, the trained people who don't know what they're doing, teach the youth how to actually be an effective police officer, give them the knowledge to think about it. But again, there needs to be stuff in place for you as a supervisor to manage as well. It can't be like, all right, Eric, this is your world. John, this is your world, and you get to do whatever you want in it. It's like it shouldn't be that way. And that's because what do you have? Then you have hundreds, if not, you have thousands of different police departments, thousands of them. Some police departments, listen, there's some prisons I speak to that they're short-staffed, they're overworked, and the morale's good. And that's because they have good bosses and there's good leadership. But they're still short-staffed and they're still overworked, and it's still physically and mentally draining on the cops. And then there's commands that are doing much better than them as far as the staffing, and they're not as overworked, and the morale's horrific. So, and that's because of bad leadership. I mean, so good leaders matter, but there needs to be stuff put in place. And I think the follow-through really needs to come again from the unions. Rich Kentafty brings it up here. I hear there are cops that are not getting paid 21 hours. Getting paid after that 21 tours. Is that true? And what's the trustee and what are the trustees making and the delegates? And and Tom says the commands will pay you. You'll win that battle, but you'll lose the war because they'll shut you down on overtime. I disagree. You're not even fighting the war. You're not even fighting the war. Your union's not fighting the war. Your bosses aren't fighting the war. Your leaders aren't fighting the war, because it should just be, listen, this is what it is. It's 21 hours. Everyone should do it. Why? Because we can't solve and fix problems that we can't identify. When we hide the problems, we don't identify the problems. When you're on the desk and you walk in, and whoever was on the desk before you has 14 prisoners that were there from the midnights, and you're walking in for a 4 to 12, and you're like, you didn't transport any of these guys? And you had 7 sectors on patrol, and all your buddies are hanging out in the station house right now? When you walk in, and now you're down to 1 car, and they're telling you, oh, yeah, well, we gave this guy off, and that guy's off, and then, you got to put all these things, and you have 1 car on patrol? And you're like, yeah, I have 5 sectors out here to start the day, when you really started the call with 1 sector. You don't have a problem. You lied. You lied to hurt yourself. You lied to put yourself, your cops in danger, and you set yourself and your cops up for failure because you didn't want to notify the borough that you had 1 car, because you didn't want the CO to be pissed at you. Well, guess what? Leadership sucks. The truth sucks. That's just what it is. It sucks. Have I done that before? Yeah, I've done it. And then I stopped doing it because I realized how stupid it was immediately. I was like, wow, this is really bad. This is really dumb. I'm never doing this again. This was the stupidest shit I ever did. I think that's the problem is like, and same thing with these tour changes. You getting tour change? Put in for it. All of you. It should be across the board, whatever rank you are, depending on your tour changes, whatever it is. Everybody should stay in line. Should be bipartisan. I don't care if you like the CO. I don't care if you don't like the CO. Put in for your money. This is what it is. These were the rules put in place. I didn't put them in place. It is what it is. How long are they taking your overtime for, dude? They can't take away the overtime if they wanted to. How long are they taking the overtime for?
I just want to say I hope our friends and listeners to the podcast are enjoying today's podcast. John and I spoke yesterday. Said, for Friday, let's do something different. So this turned out to be kind of like a round table, get everybody involved. And let's just talk about not actual daily news, but just talk about the NYPD overtime. And I'm sure there's other agencies out there right now that are probably having the same problem that actually mirrors what's going on here. So if there's other agencies out there, plug in. We want to hear from you also. We appreciate the roundtable. So at this time, that's why I just want to ask, like and subscribe, please. We appreciate it. If you're already a subscribed member, thank you so much for being a friend to the podcast. Do me a favor, please. Go on X if you have an X handle and share out this link. Reshare the post. Constantly share it out there. We want to grow together. So we appreciate it. Shout out to you. M. Franco says, Jesse James, good man. Why? Because Jesse James said exactly what I've been talking about. Jesse James said that when he was a delegate, he was out in the field. Absolutely. If you're a PBA delegate, you should be out in the field so that you can actually assimilate to the cops and understand what they're going through. How can you understand what they're going through if you're not out there, if you're not having the Donnie body camera, if you're not wearing that uniform, not carrying that taser and having all that responsibility and accountability? They have to be able to understand you. So, John, what you're saying, by the way, is fantastic. You should read, if you have not already, read the book by Steve Jobs. I love it. Great book. Talks about having a system in place, which is what you're talking about. Yes, there should be a system in place. So I think that you and I can compromise, because I believe it could be a case-by-case basis if there's good leadership, uniformity around the entire police department, and you're saying there should be a number. So maybe we can compromise somewhere in the middle where there's kind of like a guideline. It's like, yes, use a case-by-case basis with these guidelines. It shouldn't be exceeding too many hours, but at the same token, if you have someone here that is the exception, or maybe there's something that's really important. So I think there's somewhere we can meet in the middle with that. And I do appreciate your input on that. So I appreciate all our friends and listeners on the podcast. I think this is a great roundtable. Feel free, express yourself, show your opinions. They're important. This is the locker room talk that we actually have in public. So according to John Shell, what goes on in the locker room is actually representative of good morale. But what we're talking about right now, this is the real locker room talk, John Shell. This is the real locker room talk right now with New York's finest channel, Unfiltered podcast, friends and listeners. Right now, this is the legit locker room talk. Richard Kentraff, what about member of service not getting the 2 hours or 20-minute breaks or 1 hour lunch breaks, and the union is doing nothing about it? Absolutely. That's been a problem forever. I remember I was never getting meal, but you're absolutely right. That's why it's upon the leader. We need good leaders to make sure that our cops are getting meals, but we have effective leadership at the top to make sure that the lieutenants can be lieutenants, the sergeants can be sergeants, because it's a diminished police department, so that they can actually make sure that cops are getting meals. Because good leaders, that's what it can't give you a raise, but they make sure that you have your amenities. You need that lunch break so you can be an effective worker. You need that time. You need that break during the day. I think it makes you more effective. You take a break, you cool down, and then you reset the clock. But just to keep going, you burn the candle on both ends.
Meal's a privilege, kid. Listen, it's unfortunate. I was the worst, man. I tried to get people a meal, but I was the worst. But I was always coming in behind the gun. I was the worst, dude. But in all fairness, I wasn't really a guy that took meal much. I went out, I ate in the car, regardless, cop, supervisor, didn't matter. I really just never really took a meal ever. I came into work early. I worked out early. If you see me working out, it wasn't during my tour. It was never, people used to come in. You're always in the gym. I'm like, get out of here. I didn't even sign in yet. Get away from me. I'm always in the gym. Like, you don't even know what you're talking about. I'm not even getting paid. Shut your mouth. I'm not getting overtime. I'm not getting time. Get out of here.
When I was on patrol, John, I never got meal. Never. I mean, I was working with Valachi. Valachi, shout out to you, brother. We were working. We would never take meal. And we would remember some of the cops out there. They know who they are. Crying if they didn't get meal. They took meal every day. You knew what sector they were. It didn't matter, man. The place could be blowing up. You know what? Looking back at it in hindsight, maybe they were the smart ones, making sure they get the meal. We didn't care. Like, you know what? We were young cops. We were full of energy. We were both Marines. Like, whatever. But later on, when it came to working as a team, as an anti-crime sergeant, special operations lieutenant, I thought it was important to be effective, to have that we would break bread together. So religiously, as a crime sergeant and as a special ops lieutenant, we would go out and we would all go out and eat together. We would sit somewhere, we would take that hour, and we would eat together. And I thought that really made us even more effective. We'd build a bond, we'd break bread, we'd talk about stuff other than the job for an hour. And then we'd go out and get guns, and it made everyone better. And a lot of times the guys would work out together. So it really built the camaraderie. And people would always say, well, what is, you guys are out there, you're killing it. What are you guys doing different? I said, nothing. We have the same talent you have, but we built relationships. building relationships is a fundamental tool to leadership. And to really succeed, you got to build relationships with your people. That doesn't mean you have to build friendships, but you got to build relationships. Crazy 10-7 says, Eric said it time to take a drink. Yeah, go out with your people. You should go out with your people, and maybe go to, if they have a baby shower or whatever the case is, whatever, go support them and build those relationships.
Yeah. So someone asked, said, how much is overtime going to be an issue when Trump makes it tax-free overtime? I think it's still going to be an issue, dude. Listen, I everybody loves money, but you're limited. We're human, we're human, and that's, it's something that we all have to realize at some point. When I left the job, I started a business. I started a couple of businesses actually, but one of them I started was very demanding. It was a transportation business. I recently got rid of it. I just couldn't do it anymore. I was up at 3:00 in the morning. I was working all hours of the night, and I was working myself to forget about it. I was working,
and doing a podcast,
and doing the podcast, and doing all and going out on social media and doing media interviews and testifying at this council and that council. And I just realized at one point, I was like, you know what? I was like, what the hell am I doing? And my wife said to me, she's like, what are you doing? I was like, what do you mean? What am I doing? I'm making money. Like, what are you asking me? What am I doing? Well, I don't even understand what this question is. She's like, yeah, I know. But you're never home. What are you spending the money on? Like, we're okay. Like, what's going on here that you're working like a maniac? Like, she's like, it's insane. She's like, you're gonna work yourself to death. Like, you don't sleep, you don't do anything. You work 7 days a week. You retire from the police. You might as well have just stayed. You might as well have just did what they wanted you to do and stayed. And like, this is crazy. She's like, you work like an animal in the police department. You're working harder now. And I'm like, and because I just always had that mentality of, if there was overtime out there and I didn't take it, I was leaving food on the table. I was leaving money out there. And that was always my mentality. So even if I was dead tired and my CO was like, John, you want to come in on Sunday? And I'm like, I couldn't say no. Because I'm like, I just automatically, whatever my pay rate was at that time, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm getting 8 hours. I'm getting 8 hours, 57 minutes in cash on Sunday to come in to do crime work, to do my same job or whatever it was. How could I say no? Or I'm getting, oh, you want to go do the Thanksgiving Day parade? Okay. I actually, the details during the week, I didn't want to do. If you were paying me overtime, I didn't care. And that's how I looked at it. I looked at it like leaving money on the table. And I never wanted to do it. Yeah, someone said Uber Eats isn't a transportation business. No, it was actually a transportation business. But thanks for asking. We won transportation business of the year 2 years in a row here in Florida. So
shout out to Crazy 10-7. Crazy 10-7 corrected me. I thought he was saying that it's good to go out and have drinks with you guys. He says, no, I take a drink every time you say anti-crime sergeant, special operations lieutenant. You're the best. You're the best, brother. Thank you so much. I think I know who Crazy 10-7 is. Shout out. That's outstanding. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. We have a good time and laugh. I appreciate it. Uber Eats, brother.
Yeah, Uber Eats. I made a lot more money than Uber Eats. I'll tell you that.
Dude, so, I got to admit, I never said no to details, man. It didn't matter what it is. My rule of thumb is I wasn't going to cry. They gave me a notification. I just took it. And I remember towards the end of my career, the last year, when I had leprosy in the police spot, I went from Captain America. People afraid to talk to me. Like they would get a CCRB if they spoke to me. So I started getting detailed out to Times Square quite often. And there was another lieutenant who was crying about it. She didn't know that I knew. I never said a word. But I was, it was getting, it was, she would go, I would go, another lieutenant would get mixed up. And then all of a sudden I noticed that I was going constantly and she wasn't going at all. And she was pretty new. She was crying about it. I don't care. She knows who she is. Not a big deal. I never complained about it. I just took it. But, listen, we all got to help each other out. I don't see a reason to cry about it. Listen, why can't we all just help each other out? I do it. You do it. I guess at that point they saw me as, I was just at that point discarded. I was abandoned. You did all that anti-crime stuff. We appreciate it. But now you got all these CCRBs. You're in your office. Somehow they said they didn't want me to go out in the street and get more CCRBs, but it was okay for me to go to Times Square. That was okay because nobody else wanted to go. So I didn't complain about it. I just took it. I think that's what we should do. Why complain? Just do it. I think it takes more work to just complain about it. But, oh, well, that's my rant.
No, yeah, it just wasn't good mentally. I don't think it's a good mental state. Like I said, I only ever, and maybe I'm dumb, but just for me to cope mentally, I just never had anything planned until I was out the door and I had no notifications and nothing happened. Like then I was like, okay, my RDOs and my RDOs. Same thing when I went to work. If I did a day tour, oh, we want to go out to eat tonight, maybe, maybe we'll see. Let's see what happens. Plenty of times I made plans and I never got to do it. I had to cancel it almost immediately into my tour. Like, yo, there's no way I'm making it. I'm not gonna kill myself to get out in time. I'm never gonna make it.
I never made plans. I worked every year. I didn't until I retired. I actually was off on New Year's. I worked New Year's every year. I could have taken as my pick, and I did not. So I would be out there with my guys because I knew they'd be working. You know what? I worked New Year's every year. That was my thing. I thought, if you're doing special operations, you should be out there on New Year's. That's when there's gunfire. We always made sure that I was working. Halloween and New Year's, I always worked, and then Christmas we would take off. So and Thanksgiving, but New Year's and Halloween always at work.
Reach Kentap said, I worked 8-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, and finally 10-hour shifts, and the 12s were killers, and they took a toll on us. Bogey says, when I left in 22, my unit was so far behind in casework, they let us do 60 hours in the command, and you could do details. When I ended the year with 823 hours, I hear guys are crushing it now. Some people are making 1,200 hours. So it's a lot, man. And again, like I said, some people for their own good should be held back if they're not in their final years. I guess if you're in your final years, I understand it. But then when you look at the public and for the people that aren't cops on here that are listening and watching, you're probably like, damn, oh my God, these guys are making crazy, crazy money. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. And like, how much am I getting bang for my buck? Like, do I really have a cop out there, or am I just giving these guys extra money? And that's a fair point as well too. Because at some point you're just like forget who said it on here, but like after 10 hours, you're really just not that productive anymore, and you're not partaking in the mission of public safety. Even if you're in the fray, your brain's not there. You might be physically there, but you're not there. We've all been there, dude. I've been on details where my legs are swollen because I've been standing for 3 days, 16, 17 hours a day. My legs are swollen, and I'm like, I'm out of it, dude. I can't wait to get to bed. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten. I'm like, I can't even think straight anymore. And then even not even just the details when you go to the college too. There's been times that I got to the DA's office 3 days later, and I didn't even remember the original call or how it started. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even remember what happened.
Well,
I haven't slept in 3 days.
Yeah, I also think we should step up and take care of each other. Like I said, I would normally take Christmas off, but at the same token, I'm Jewish, so I always felt like Jews for Christmas. I love Christmas. I do. I love Christmas, but there were plenty of times I saw guys that couldn't get off for Christmas, and honestly, I stepped up. I'm like, yo, I'll take it. I'll take the date for you. I'm Jewish anyway. I just love Christmas, but I'll work. There were plenty of times I'm like, I'll work for you. Go ahead, go take the day. And that's what we should do. We should work with each other. If you know someone else, it's a day too important to them, step up, work for them, and that's where the real camaraderie comes in, is we have to know each other and step up. Like, hey, you need help? Let me help you out. And a lot of times people don't want to help each other out. And I think it's very self-serving. I think we should VSS Venturas put Lieutenant Oive on the air. So, but I agree. There has to be more camaraderie. Has to be more morale. According to John Shell, the morale is great. Yeah, the morale must be great at the upper echelon of the police department. The morale is great for khaki pants, but not everybody else. VSS Venturas, again, you're on fire today. I love it. Chief Shell, let me see if I get that comment up again here. You got it? Chief Shell, you on the air. Redirect, move those barriers. Redirect, lots of pedestrians. Redirect, show me making a mess of the detail. redirect. It's funny, right? It's funny to talk about the details because, John, you and I spoke about the details quite often. We speak about offline all the time. How annoying is it? You work in overtime, you work in these details, and this has been happening forever. Not even just this administration, but even before. These chiefs were not communicating with each other. I mean, you pick the barrier up, like, oh, move it here. And another captain comes up, move the barrier over, and you're just constantly moving the barriers. Like, oh, my God, what are we doing here? And was the left hand talking to the right hand? And I think ultimately what I'm trying to say is that I think that if we look at most aspects of the police department where they're failing, you can look at the leadership. The leadership is the problem, that we've gotten to this point that the cops are so overworked, that they're robbing from Peter to pay Paul, that John McCarry comes into work and he's a 7'5" precinct cop, and now he's working in transit. And the next day he comes and he's going to 1PP. And the next day he comes in, he's doing a different tour. That's taxing. Every day you go to work and you have no idea what's in front of you, and you have that stress like, oh, am I working a different tour today? Am I going to find parking? These are issues that cops think about. I'm sure a lot of people that don't know the police world wouldn't understand. That's why I say policing is dog years, especially if you're doing all this overtime. A lot of people tell me retirement, oh, wow, congratulations, you got to retire young. I'm like, yeah, but it's dog years. It's dog years. For every year, it's almost like 7 years.
Yeah. No, it's, and Unfiltered Fishing brings up a great point about the overtime. He says, all this OT talk and extended hours, it's important to mention that if you are looking to do this and retire, make sure you have a hobby. It's not going to be easy to go 100 miles an hour to zero. And, that's what I kind of alluded to that earlier, right? So like the way that I retired was not normal, and I wish that on nobody ever. But so I'm sure that was like taxing on me mentally, but I didn't know it at the time, right? I'm pretty like straightforward person. The plan was I was going to take a year off. At least a year, or maybe just ride until my pension and then figure it out. But I had enough money to sustain my lifestyle and all that. And I literally, the first day that I was done moving my whole house and everything that I needed to do, the first day I was sitting there, my kids were in school, my wife was working, and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing? I can't do this. So I instantly started a business. And then I replaced doing 100 miles an hour to going 120 miles an hour, because then I'm doing the podcast, I'm doing this, I'm going to media events, and now I'm running a business, right? And I'm not only running it, I'm operating the business as well. And I'm doing all these other added things on top of it, all the administrative, I'm doing the grunt work, I'm doing everything. And so, my wife had told me, like, you got to chill out, dude. Like, there's something wrong with you. Like, there's something really wrong with you. Like, you just work all the time. She's like, I can't believe it. She's like, you're worse than you ever been. And I was like, you know what? She's right. I was like, I got to start. So I thought about it for about a month or two. And I'm like, you know what? She's right. Like, I retired from the police department, I'm running around like a maniac. I'm not enjoying my life. I live in a beautiful place. And I'm not really enjoying my life, and I should be, because I earned that. I think I earned that after all the work I've done since I'm a kid. And so I started to tail off on my business. I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna stretch myself thin. I'm gonna put limits on myself. And so I brought myself down. And I'm like, all right. And I'm focusing on working out. I work out in the morning. I'm going for walks in the day. I'm reading. I'm meditating, and I freak out. I have a panic attack. Freak out, start getting anxiety. I get this, and I don't know, I don't know what the hell's going on. And so I go sit down, and I go to the doctor, and the doctor, I have a good holistic doctor, and he's like, dude, I'll be honest with you. He's like, we did a whole workup on you, your heart, your body. Because at first I'm like, it's my heart, I'm dying, this, that. He's like, you're fine. He's like, you're perfectly healthy. You're in much better shape than anybody your age. He's like, you're in the top percentile of your age. He's like, you're good. Your blood works fine. Everything's good with you. He's like, I'll tell you what it is. You were probably running like a maniac at 100 miles an hour, and now you stopped. And I see this all the time. I see first responders. I see this happen with people in business that are really high-performing business people. I see this happen with nurses. I see this happen with military guys. They adjust to normal life, and then They come down and they freak out. They have a panic attack. He's like, it's perfectly normal. You're detoxing from all the stuff you did. So I think it's a great point on filtered fishing. Like I said, it does take a toll on you mentally and physically, and that toll will happen later, and you won't realize it at the time. I actually have someone texting me right now how they're doing 860 hours for the year and they feel great. It's no big deal. And I'm like, I get it. I understand what you're saying, because I would do it too, and I never knew what it was doing to me. Like, and Eric alluded to that too. But when you look at the pictures of yourself, when you go back in the years, in those times that you were doing all that overtime, you're going to see it. You're going to be like, wow, look a lot different. I feel a lot different now than I did then. And even now, I'll be honest, there's some days I could do whatever I want. I have a great life. I could go fishing right now. I could do whatever the hell I want all day long. I have plenty of money to do it. I could do whatever the hell I need to do. And there's times I'm sitting there and I'm like, I want to go sign up and become a cop because I want to go back into that system. And I'm like, it's the toll that from doing it over and over and over again, going 100 miles an hour, you're addicted to it. You're completely addicted to it.
Ron Layson nailed it, right? When he retired, he said you need a hobby or young kids. Shout out to you, Ron Layson. He's got some young kids at home. I think it's awesome. So listen, if you decide to have kids later on in life and when you retire, you will be busy. Your kids will be forced you will have a hobby. Absolutely, I agree. I love this roundtable. I think this is great with our friends and listeners really weighing in. There was another good comment I wanted to read. They're flying in here. Man. Here. I don't want to get totally off topic, but I'll just answer this real quick. Mikey G, metal detecting LI. I guess it's from Long Island. Speaking of parking, what's the real deal behind that cop who got into a fight with the other female cop? So there is a YouTube video where a female police officer, went to YouTube to describe how she was assaulted in the parking lot of a precinct, and then how that investigation didn't go anywhere to the point she had to reach out to the DA's office. And then also she makes allegations that a lieutenant entered the locker room while she was getting dressed several times. We don't know, reasons unknown. We don't know actually what happened there. And we can't prove or disprove her allegations. That's not the point. The point that we discussed it is, whatever happened in the parking lot and whatever happened in the locker room, we're not really harping on. What we're talking about is the response of the police department. And there has been a failed response, which mirrors a lot of the investigations we've seen with internal affairs, particularly mirrors the investigation that John and I have, the allegations we've made. And also, will this female cop be allowed the same permission to express herself on social media as the cops in khaki pants did, as John Shell does, as Cash Daughtry, Tariq Shepard, many others that they've been very expressive on social media? Will this girl be permitted the same allotment, or will she face the arm of discipline from the police department? And will it solidify that there is a 3-tiered system and rules for thee and rules not for me? And so that's what we were talking about. If you have an opportunity, take a look. It's on YouTube. John, I think you put the link on us. Also, again, like, share, and subscribe this podcast. Please repost it out there on X. Put it out on Instagram. Let's keep building together. This is Locker Room Talk. It's opinions. It's real perspective. It's really important to have these conversations. I'm sure the police department, the upper echelon, is listening to this podcast, and hopefully they take the good from this and discuss these issues that we spoke about today, about the burden that the members have in the police department with this excessive overtime, and that good leadership has to step in and say, hey, I'm going to cap you at this point because you just worked so much this week. You need a day off. You need a time to regroup. You need a time to relax. You need to take care of yourself. Make sure you're eating healthy. So we definitely need a system in place. It can't just be a free-for-all. We have to take care of each other. That's really what it comes down to. We have to be humble and be willing to take care of others. Someone had said it in here earlier. I think it was a female actually who made a comment that she stepped up and worked holidays for others, and people don't reciprocate pretty much, and that's true. So you know what? At the same time, that's why I do for others, and I don't really expect them to give it back if I don't want that to be transactional. Unfortunately, most things in life are transactional. But if you just want to be a good person and do it, don't expect anything back. And if they don't, for that specific person, you just never do it again. So it just costs you some of your time.
Yeah, I just I wouldn't put too much hope in people. They're gonna disappoint you. So if you're gonna do it, do it. They're 100% not gonna return the favor on you. I was the same way when I was a kid and I had no kids. I didn't care. You're gonna be with your kids. Don't worry about it. I got no kids. And then when I had kids, nobody gave a shit. And then they didn't have kids. They're crying. Oh, I want to go to my mother's house. Like, dude, are you serious? Like, smack you. Like, you're a grown man. And it's like. Whatever. It is what it is. But the video with the girl, I mean, again, I don't care how you feel about it, what your thoughts about her coming out and talking about it are. It doesn't matter to me what anyone says. From all the sources I got, it absolutely happened. The body camera will prove it. Cameras from the precinct will prove it. And everything that happened after that, I think is a result of what happened that night in the parking lot. So I think it should be rectified. And I hope that she's not targeted for that. And I hope that she's able to go on and have a successful career and move past this incident. But I think the things that happened were a result of how the department, once again, failed to handle a situation properly, not with integrity. So I at this point, after speaking to a few people, I absolutely believe the story, and I think it a lot of the things that happened after were wrong. And again, if she was suspended over having an earpiece in her ear, and then the inspector wouldn't even tell her why she was being suspended, you got a serious problem in the New York City Police Department, and you could see why morale's in the dumps. Before we get out of here, it's 2 hours, 10 minutes. Let's just talk about this real quick. Anything else on the overtime before we go?
No, I just want to comment. Like, listen, as far as having an earpiece, I never liked it either. I didn't like when cops had earpieces. I think it's a distraction. I would make them take it out. But the crime has to fit the punishment has to fit the crime. To be suspended for that is extremely egregious. It sounds like some of the stuff that happened to Stephen Lee. So I definitely believe this happened. Again,
and not even tell her, dude. But how about not even tell her? Like, I'm saying, you're suspended. What am I suspended for? I don't have to tell you. Like, no, you do. Could you imagine that?
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous. I think her name was Yilda Perez. So check it out. I think, and again, I just want to go back to what I was saying. Some of the cops are reaching out to me. Oh, if it was two men, they would just fight out in the parking lot. That would be it. No, not at all. I've seen plenty of men on this job that do not handle things that way. Not at all. And honestly, I don't expect women to be fighting in the parking lot either. Honestly, I mean, I don't want my wife fighting in the parking lot. I'm sure you don't either. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. If you want to have a mutual fight in the locker room, or you want to go to smoker, you want to get on the mat, do some jiu-jitsu, fine. But to be fighting in public in the parking lot, that's unprofessional. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Nah, that's street stuff. It's absolutely wrong. Cops shouldn't be doing it. I agree with you 100%. All right, so this comes out this morning. A illegal alien with a loaded AR-15 and a suspected Mexican cartel member freed from jail after allegedly assaulting NYPD cops, or what I like to call it now that we have the body camera is actually assaulting NYPD cops. What we saw on the video is I don't believe that the NY is as terrible as this administration is and the Eric Adams administration is. I don't believe they're doctoring body cameras at this point. So not yet anyway. So we'll see. But so a Big Apple illegal immigrant armed with a loaded AR-15 assault rifle and his Mexican cartel pal are both back on the streets, despite ganging up on NYPD cops at a Bronx subway station. Abraham Sosa, 20, an illegal immigrant living off of your tax dollars in a Bronx daycare center, was hit with assault, gun possession, resisting arrest, and trespassing charges after being nabbed urinating in a subway tunnel on November 5th while lugging the assault weapon in his backpack, according to sources. His pal, 21-year-old Christopher Myron, allegedly jumped into the fray when Sosa got into the scuffle with New York's finest, leaving two cops injured, according to the criminal complaint. So here we are, AR-15, assault rifle, out on the street. Yet we have people in jail right now in New York City, particularly for owning pieces of assault rifles, never been arrested before, in their home, not a danger to anyone, never committed a crime, yet they're in jail for a very long time. And now we see an illegal alien who crossed his border here illegally, has a AR-15 with a fully loaded magazine. So that is a loaded firearm with the intent to use, right? When you put all those pieces together, is it capable of firing? Absolutely. Being just let out. So I guess the gun laws in New York City just only apply to people who actually have gun permits and are here legally.
I think that's a great point you brought up. I think everyone should take a look if you're not aware of it now. There's a case. His name is Dexter Taylor. He's from Brooklyn, New York, a prominent black man who I think he was an engineer, right? Very, very successful, highly respected person in the community, got arrested and charged and convicted for having ghost guns. Absolutely ridiculous. The sentence that he got, I think I want to say it's 10 years, something ridiculous. Meanwhile, you get illegal perpetrators on the street, illegal military-age males that shouldn't even be in this country with an AR-15 and not held accountable and yet constantly released. Why is it that good, obliging citizens face the arm of justice in this city, and yet we have illegal military-age males? So don't tell me it's a race thing. It's not a race thing. It's a thing of prominence. It's a thing. It's a criminal-first society, right? We're taking care of migrants. But Dexter Taylor, please check him out. Dexter Taylor from Brooklyn, New York, is convicted for having ghost guns that he built in his own home. Absolutely ridiculous. John, what are your thoughts on that?
It's two-tier justice system, my friend. Two-tier justice system without a doubt. John Raymond says he can't stay because he's got to go get ready for Adams on The View. That's 11 o'clock. I agree. Must-see TV. Eric Adams on The View. I'd love to see it now that he's MAGA now. I want to see how that ends up for him. And Bogue says, imagine getting out after carrying an assault rifle. Man, I wish I was still at the ballistics lab. Love to see the rifle. Well, having a revolving door is good for business. AR-15 and free New York City. Don't have Elk and Diaz no more. Dexter was 3D printing guns at his home. Absolutely. But he was a legal firearm owner, never been arrested before in his life. Not really a danger. If I live next door to Dexter Taylor or you live next door to Dexter Taylor, it's not somebody you're really worried about at all. I'd probably call him when I'm on vacation. Hey, can you bring my garbage cans out? Here's the code to my garage. Where these guys are actively out there preying on civilians and citizens and carrying a loaded assault rifle. Well, I don't even want to call it an assault rifle, AR-15. But what we're constantly told is the worst firearm, a weapon of war. So Dexter Taylor was printing weapons of war at his home, but this guy was just scared. He was just protecting himself. He was just because all the gangs that are in New York City had to protect himself. So we could let him out. Let him out.
You can't have a gang database, right? You can't have a gang database because we're going to violate their rights. But Dexter Taylor can't have firearms in his home. Absolutely ridiculous. You know what? We were on X Space. We talked about that. We talked about the Dexter incident. I said the only thing that I'm for is the guns actually having a serial number, just like a car has a VIN number. But again, I don't think you should be arrested for that. Just be somewhere where the FFA says, listen, I'm sorry, the FFL, listen, just make sure you put a number on this so it's identifiable. That's it. In case it's ever lost or someone stole it, we can actually find it. But to be arrested for it, that's the most ridiculous thing. I arrested the most violent perpetrators on the street with illegal firearms who had intent to use it. Dexter Taylor's building in his home. This is ridiculous. It's amazing, right? You can buy all the parts, but if you put it together, now you're on the rest. I mean, absolutely ridiculous that it went as far as conviction. So Urban Taunt put, I'm on Team Dexter. Absolutely support Dexter. I sure do. John supports him. Dexter Taylor, we support you. God bless. If Dexter Taylor needs any help, anyone knows him personally, you can reach out. If you have any information, reach out to www.thefinestsunfiltered.com. If there's any way we could help out, put some information out there, we would definitely love to.
Lone Silencer says, after the Trump win, Eric Adams now feels MAGA. Make Adams great again. I think you're right. Neil S. says, why isn't the issue of New York City, New York State being sanctuary put on the ballot? I think it is on the ballot. I think you're going to see that big time governor election 2026. Unfortunately, the candidates, again, who's running governor, who's running for mayor? If a lot of times New York City and New York State residents are blamed for how they vote. And I always get that. Oh, you get what you vote for. You get what you vote for. I'm like, I never voted for any of these maniacs. I always voted for the proper person that would have, I never vote. Most of the time I voted in my life, with the exception of a few. And in this last presidential election, I always was a loser. Most of the times I never really voted with the person who won. So I'm like, I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know what you mean by you get what you vote for. What I've came to realize as I pay attention to politics more and more is that you can't vote for somebody that's not there. If you're given no option, if Eric Adams now becomes the Republican candidate and I get to choose between Brad Lander and Eric Adams, there's no choice. There's no choice for me. I don't even vote in that election.
They made the choice for you, right? They made the choice.
It's like, all right, what do I got to do? Like, what do I like? So, I mean, I think that's the bigger problem is like, we got to hone down on the choices. Like, who's running for on the Republican ticket for mayor of New York City, who's running on the Republican ticket for governor of New York State. And if you don't know right at this moment in time, there's a problem in your local GOP. There's every GOP member, Republican member that's elected that you voted for, and every group that they belong to should be held accountable for that, because that is being done intentionally. And that's why I told people earlier, look at these Republicans that are running unopposed and tell me why they are when they're in a Democratic machine. Why are they running opposed? There were deals made. That's why they don't mentor. That's why they don't recruit new candidates. That's why they don't ever run effective candidates, because there are deals being made behind closed doors, and it's clear as day. That's what's happening. Let's finish up this article and get out of here. We're going on a long time, and that is must-see TV. Do I have this up on the screen? No, I don't even have it up on the screen. Here's the AR.
There it goes.
Here's the AR-15 that this gentleman was carrying in a train station, loaded. You see the clip, loaded. You see the magazine loaded in his backpack. Yet both thugs are free. Sosa, after posting $25,000 bond, and Myron released without bail. Where are they getting $25,000 from? Sources said on a tattoo on Myron's arm links him to a vicious drug cartel. This is crazy, one frustrated Bronx detective told the Post Thursday. You have a member of a Mexican cartel running around. The tattoo is a billboard for "I am a criminal. I don't care about your laws. Can it get more dangerous than riding a subway with a loaded rifle?" And when he's not on the train, he's upstairs from little children in a daycare center, they said. These are two very dangerous scenarios. It was not immediately clear if one or both of the suspects are in the U.S. illegally. I'm going to say right now, they are. So I don't think that's a hard, sue me if I'm wrong. I'm going to say right now they are. According to the police, the melee unfolded after Sosa strolled past a no trespassing sign at the Kingsbridge Road B&D train station at around 4:30 p.m. Just those laws don't apply to me. Cops spotted him urinating in the subway tunnel and questioned him. Really? Sosa allegedly told the officers, according to a criminal complaint, for using the bathroom. I hurt my ankle, he told me, the cops. Let me show you my ankle. But when the police started to handcuff him, Sosa went nuts and fought back. And Myron jumped in and started fighting with the officers, knocking two of them to the ground. Both men were busted and charged and arraigned in a Bronx criminal court the following day. However, Myron was released without bail, and Sosa was sent to Rikers Island on a $25,000 bond, which he posted on November 12th. Jail records show both are due back in court on December 9th. So they're going to I wonder what's going to happen between now and December 9th. Do you think we're going to read about them again?
Wow, a $25,000 bond. That's nothing. What a joke. First of all, if they are part of Tren de Aragua stems in eight or more countries in South America right now. They're worth $10 to $15 million. So $25,000 right now for them is nothing. They have the ability to get their hands on plenty of money. Again, this is absolutely ridiculous. Dexter Taylor is convicted while we have these savage animals that run the streets. John, there's no doubt about it. You don't even have to question it. 100% they're illegals. But again, sanctuary city. But now we have MAGA John. So MAGA Adams. I saw the comment come up and I saw your name. It just registered in my head. But we have MAGA Adams. Maybe they'll get deported now. I don't know. We'll see. While Eric Adams wants a pardon, let's see what happens with the tale of two Erics. Before we leave, I just want to say this. Going back to what we were talking about before, I think this is quite interesting. Almost done. Says, this is great. This is good. This is a good way to finish the podcast here. Latest rumor is Adams asked PC not to step down just yet, claiming he didn't have a viable replacement. I thought the bench was deep. Yeah, that's outstanding. He's got some bench. John, I don't know if you know this, but I heard through a good source. I know that Tucker is Shepard's mentor, but I hear that Shepard also drove Tucker. Did you know that?
Well, yeah. I think that's what they're saying. I mean, I don't know what you mentored Shepard to do. Is like if drinking coffee and hanging out is mentorship, then that's what I think the proper word is protected Shepard, took care of Shepard, right? Yeah, no, I think Shepard did drive him. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's what I heard. But I did hear that Shepard loved hanging out in the chief detective's office and then the PC's office. So that I did hear. That's credible information that he was constantly in there instead of doing a job like the rest of us were doing. He was drinking coffee, hanging out, spreading rumors, making sure his guys weren't watching Fox News. Can't be political. Put a CNN on.
Well, like I said, it shows Ben Tucker's in, and if Ben Tucker is the PC, like I said, he's pretty stoic, he's intelligent, he's quiet, but we still continue with the same nepotism. It's business as usual. So it's gonna be another problem. It's another issue. I won't be surprised. More nepotism. Yeah. It will still be the Three Kings. So, if he gets promoted, maybe because Shepard was his boy, maybe we'll shift a little bit from Kaz to Shepard. But business as usual.
Yeah, and everyone's saying today, but I don't know, man. Those are just rumors. I hear maybe Wednesday too. Wednesday might be a day. I don't know why. I just have a feeling. But let's see. Let's see what happens. You got anything before we close it out?
No, 2 hours and 25 minutes into it. Again, like and subscribe. Hit that button, smash it away, share out this post. Make sure people watch it. Thank you so much for checking us out, friends and listeners to the podcast. Once in a while, I think we'll do these round tables where we just have an actual specific discussion about the NYPD or maybe another law enforcement agency or another topic and get your thoughts and get your perspective. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. We will be back Monday, 8:05 Eastern time, and I'm not sure where I'll be, but I'll let you know if I'm on Mountain Time or Pacific Time, but I'll be somewhere. I don't have a house right now, but I have a home. So shout out. Take care.
Be back at you, people.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.